answers to questions, statements by ministers, items under public business, and private members' motions. But before we begin, let's try a parliamentary trivia question. True or false? The Office of the Information Commissioner is responsible for promoting good practice in handling personal data and giving advice and guidance on data protection. Get the answer at the end of this introduction. The following matters will be addressed. Under public business, the Financial Administration and Audit Amendment No. 3 Act 2023 is to be taken. The annual sectoral debate presentations continues with Member of Parliament for Portland Western and Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport Daryl down to make his contribution. You can expect him to talk about the government's program to provide free internet service to communities. He could also give information on the ministry's plan to retrain and recertify drivers in the public transport system. Last month, following a meeting with the National Road Safety Council, it was announced that the drivers will participate in an online and in-person course before receiving their certification. Member of Parliament for Manchester North Western and Opposition Spokesperson on Transport and Mining, Mikael Phillips, is also down to make his contribution. During a meeting held at the Manning School in January, he had said that the country will have a national plan to transform the transportation sector within 6 months under the next administration of the People's National Party, the PNP. That's what's on the agenda. It should be noted that elements of the day's agenda can be changed or moved. But before we go, here are a few things you should bear in mind if you plan to attend a session at Gordon House. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No visitor shall be admitted to the House without first obtaining an admission card. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. No photography, videography, or sketching of the proceedings is allowed unless so authorized by the presiding officer. It's almost time to go to the main event, but before that, let's get the answer to the trivia question we asked. True or false? The Office of the Information Commissioner is responsible for promoting good practice in handling personal data and giving advice and guidance on data protection. It's true. This is covered by the new Data Protection Act, which was officially implemented in 2023. In fact, all data controllers are required to register at the OIC for the present 2023-2024 registration year. Registration began on December 1, 2023, and data controllers were given a 6-month grace period to register, which expired on May 31, 2024. In a public notice published on June 2, the OIC outlined that data controllers have been placed in 3 categories: company or public authority, partnership, and sole trader or individual. First-time registration fees for companies and public authorities is $25,000. Partnerships are required to pay $15,000, while the fee for sole traders or individuals is $7,500. Annual renewal fees for company or public authority is $15,000, partnership $10,000, and sole trader or individual $5,000. Data controllers are companies, individuals, or entities that require your data for transactions. Under the law, personal data must only be obtained for a specific and lawful purpose and must not be processed in any manner incompatible with those purposes. Now over to the proceedings.
Your safety and security continue to be our priority. We are seeing a downward trend in major crimes, and we are investing $650 million in technology improvement for our police force to provide greater coverage across Jamaica by 2028.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Since 2016, 156,000 more Jamaicans are working. This is more than any other time in our history. Your government is caring for you.
Every student attending Heart and Estate Trust under the New Care Initiative will get $15,000 each month to help cover their travel expenses to the Heart School they're attending and get an extra $13,000 each week while they're training.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister. Most Jamaicans will tell you corruption in politics is deep-rooted, and I just saw it said, and nothing can do about that. But actually, there is, and another 152 countries are doing it. It's called asset declaration, and it works best where citizens themselves understand it and help to ensure the law is enforced. Corruption happens when public officials abuse their power to benefit themselves, family, or associates. Jamaica's Integrity Commission Act was designed to prevent corruption, and here are 5 things you should know. 1. Under this law, every year MPs and senators must report what they earn, own, and owe, and if they don't, they'll be sanctioned. 2. Their report must include the same kind of information for their wife or husband and children. 3. If they get a gift worth more than $100,000 from anyone who's not family, they must declare it. 4. A summary of the declarations of our Prime Minister and opposition leader must be published where the public can read it. 5. Parliamentarians can now be prosecuted by the Integrity Commission. They can be fined up to $2 million or serve up to 2 years in prison if they don't file their declaration or if they give false information, and $500,000 for not filing on time or ignoring requests for information. Unfortunately, our parliamentarians made changes that prevent the public from knowing when they've broken the law or when they're being investigated. We really need to change that. Visit jampja.org to find out more about the act and to track if your MP is obeying this law. If they're not, JAMP's MP Tracker will help you write, tweet, or call your MP. Ask them, you submit your declaration yet? The Integrity Commission clear you? Let's help the Parliament stay honest. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
The Joint Select Committee of Parliament reviewing the Domestic Violence Act wants to hear from you. Review the act and share your opinions with the committee. You can find a copy of the act on the Parliament's website at www.japarliament.gov.jm under the heading Publications. Once you've reviewed the act, submit your written opinions by Friday, June 14, 2024 to Clerk to the Houses, Gordon House, 81 Duke Street, Kingston, or email them at clark@japarliament.gov.jm. Let your voice be heard.
Bruises are much worse. You have to report him. Yeah, but if I go to the police station, they're just going to see it as another man and woman fighting.
Victims of domestic abuse can get help through the Domestic Violence Intervention Centers. Let me show you how to find one of these centers. Open the browser on your smartphone and type in jcf.gov.jm. When the page loads, scroll down to Resources and click on Domestic Violence Intervention Centers. This will give you a full listing of all the centers with their contact information. Or just walk into any police station and ask them to direct you to the nearest Domestic Violence Intervention Center where you can speak to a police officer.
A message from the European Union United Nations Spotlight Initiative in partnership with the Government of Jamaica.
Yo, this is we're committed committed to reducing the impact of disasters occurring in Jamaica. We're ever ready to assist you before, during, and after a disaster. But everybody have a role to play, so make we work together and follow the plan. Whether rich or poor or where you come from, hurricanes affect everyone, so be prepared. Prevention is better than cure. Be prepared. Listen to ADPEM.
A message from the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management.
For little people, it's a really big world. A big world to discover and explore. And because discoveries aren't always easy to understand, little people need help to make sense of the big world. So help them make sense of the world. When you CPG, do PG. The Broadcasting Commission, your partner for a new day.
People always say government must be held accountable. But is whose job to keep government accountable, and what that really mean? Well, you see, when ministers and public officials have to provide answers for decisions made and can face consequences for those actions and decisions, that means they're being held accountable. Keeping government accountable is a key responsibility of our elected representatives, and the Parliament provides special tools or mechanisms just for this. As citizens, we need to understand how they work so we can play our part to ensure that the members of Parliament we elect are using the tools and doing their job well. Here are 4 of the primary tools you should understand and talk to your MP about. Tool number 1, Ministers' Statements. To effectively monitor the government, MPs need to stay informed. Every Tuesday when Parliament sits, different cabinet ministers are scheduled to give an update on decisions they're making on our behalf. These updates are called Statements by Ministers. They cover a wide range of national issues that other MPs, media, and citizens may have questions about and wish to examine further. That brings us to tool number 2. What do you do when you want information? You ask questions, and that's why we have Question Time. Both opposition and government MPs can submit questions to the Prime Minister or Cabinet Ministers for details on, for example, how a contract was awarded or expenditure to purchase tablets for schools. So if you ever have a question for a government minister, try asking through your MP. After all, that's why they're your political representatives. They should represent your questions and concerns to the government. Tool number 3, Parliamentary Debates. When cabinet ministers present the government's proposals for new policies, laws, and programs, parliamentary debates allow both opposition and government MPs to air concerns, make suggestions, and endorse proposals. If you ever watch those debates, you know they can get a little fiery. But the debate is important, as it informs decisions and continues until a vote is taken on the way forward. Then we have tool number 4, Parliamentary Committees. The general sittings of Parliament are not always sufficient for detailed examination of government work, so oversight committees are formed using government and opposition members to do just that. Some committees like the PAC and the PAAC are in place for an entire parliamentary term. Their job is to monitor the use of public funds to find ways to increase value and efficiency while reducing waste and corruption. Cabinet and state ministers are not appointed to oversight committees since they are a part of the government. Some committees are formed when a need arises. For example, joint select committees are formed to review draft policies or legislation or to probe other matters of serious national importance. Members of these committees are both opposition and government MPs and senators, and these committees will usually invite citizens to share their opinions, concerns, and recommendations. So there you have it, 4 accountability tools of Parliament that are used to make sure government run right. Visit jampja.org to find contact information for your MP. Invite them to meet with the community so they can better represent your issues and concerns in Parliament and keep government accountable. Get involved and let's make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations, and grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interest, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
You may be seated. No, I'm all right. This Honorable House now resumes its sitting. It is, as usual, a great honor and pleasure to welcome all of you to this sitting of the House of Representatives on Tuesday, June 4, 2024. I would like to extend welcome to those who are joining us online via the various social media platforms and PBCJ live stream. Special welcome is being made of members of Minister Vaz's family, Ms. Caroline Palmer, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Science and Energy, Telecommunications and Transport, directors from the ministry, MSETT, stakeholders from Science, Energy, Telecommunications, and the transport sector, councillors and residents seated here from Portland Western, the constituency of Minister Vaz. Before we commence roll call, I would like to just make a very brief statement. The House should have a matter at the forefront of our minds, as every single legislator and every right-thinking Jamaican should. As members of this House, you're aware or should be aware that on Saturday, June 1st, 2024, at approximately 10:01 p.m., a Molotov cocktail was thrown at the entrance that is outside to the front door of Gordon House by an unidentified perpetrator. Contrary to reports circulating across social media and elsewhere, the building was not breached and damage to the structure was minimal due to the quick response of the police officers on duty here 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. I have received assurances that the Jamaica Constabulary Force is making every effort to apprehend the perpetrator or perpetrators involved in the shameful attack on the home of our legislature. Furthermore, additional security measures will be implemented here at Parliament, including the deployment of additional personnel and the strengthening of the electronic architecture of the building. Further assessment will be made by the National Intelligence Bureau. Thank you, members. Call of the roll.
Mr. Clark, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malahoo Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. Mackenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Charles Jr., Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terrelong, Ms. Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Whitter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Enriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Siblis, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Wright. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I'd ask for you to proceed with the agenda as listed at this time.
Thank you, House Leader. We will have statement by ministers. Announcements. Clark.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following. 1. The annual report of the Montego Bay Convention Center for the year 2019-2020. 2. Under the National Housing Trust Act, the National Housing Trust Housing Benefits Special Selection, Perth 1A Housing Development Order 2024. And 2, the National Housing Trust Housing Benefits Special Selection, Catherine Estate Housing Development Batch 2, Order 2024.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motions. Be it resolved that the National Housing Trust, Housing Benefits, Special Selection, Perth 1A Housing Development Order 2024, under the National Housing Trust Act, which was laid on the table of the House on the 4th day of June 2024, be referred to the Regulations Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report. And be it resolved that the National Housing Trust Housing Benefits Special Selection Catherine Estates Housing Development Batch 2 Order 2024 under the National Housing Trust Act, which was laid on the table of the House on the 4th day of June 2024, be referred to the Regulations Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take these motions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, House Leader. Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sitting of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills Presentation of bills without leave of the House. First obtain. Public business, House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motions, notice of which I gave earlier.
Members, those in favor? The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable Minister to take the motions, notice of which she gave earlier. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
So, Madam Speaker, at this time, I just want to indicate that the regulations be referred to the Regulations Committee. And this would conclude the debate and ask for approval.
The question is that the question is that this be brought to the Regulations Committee prior to conclusion. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader, that's for both.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, today it is our intention to continue the sectoral debate with contributions from the Honorable Daryl, Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport, and Member of Parliament for Portland Western. And also presentation by Mr. Mikael, Phillips, Opposition Spokesperson on Transportation and Mining, and Member of Parliament for Manchester Northwestern. In that order, Madam Speaker.
Orderly. We will now. Members, let us make welcome to his feet the Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport, the Member of Parliament for Portland Western.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Permission to speak from a seat other than my own.
Members, is permission granted? Minister Vaz, permission granted.
Thank you, Minister Mackenzie. Madam Speaker, it is indeed an honor to once again stand before this honorable House to report on the performance of and the upcoming plans for my portfolio responsibility. The Ministry of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport, I have given my commitment to making this journey a successful one that will leave a lasting legacy for this country long after we are gone. I do not take this task lightly as I humbly continue to serve my country, Jamaica, land we love, albeit in my last years of service. I thank God for his continued strength and guidance, and for enabling me to update our blessed nation on the strides we continue to make in science, energy, telecommunications, and transport. Before I start, I just want to thank my colleagues in the House for their kind words in my recent loss of my mom. Not to mention the loss of the CEO of the Universal Service Fund, Daniel Dawes, who served with a level of energy and commitment that is second to none. My condolences to his wife, children, family, friends, and of course, family of the Universal Service Fund. And Madam Speaker, you know, I was just today, while I was finalizing my contribution, looking over my desk and realizing that I had nominated him for a national award for this year. And unfortunately, he won't be there to receive it, but I'm sure that the committee will still approve it, even if it is posthumously. Lastly, before I start, that brings me to another point, which I often tell my colleagues in cabinet and the committee members, that there are so many people who have done so much for Jamaica at an early age, and they are overlooked because we tend to look on those who have given longer time of service. Let me remind everyone that tomorrow is promised to no one. And for the committee members, I would impress upon you to widen the net and recognize persons not because of age, but because of the quality of service to the nation. So I expect to see a definite difference in the age average in this year's nominations. As I address this House this afternoon, I publicly place on record my gratitude to the Cabinet, of which I am blessed to be a member of, and my parliamentary colleagues, spurred by the leadership of our Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness. And again, I need to pause to say a special thanks to him for not only appointing me to his cabinet in 2016, but for his friendship and loyalty to me as an individual. In some of the darkest days and nights, when you look around and you don't see anybody else, he stood there and still continues to stand by me, for which I am thankful. My dear wife, Pums, my children, 2 grandchildren up to last week, and another one born last week, Tuesday. The first male grandson, Lucas. The question is whether Jamaica can manage another vase. Not to mention my relatives and my close friends. I am grateful for the unconditional love and support, and you are a large part of why I'm here today. To the beloved, to the people of my beloved constituency, West Portland, my councillors, 4 of them out of 4, constituency workers, delegates, I can only say thank you, because without you, there's no me. Thank you for entrusting me to represent you for almost 2 decades, and I look forward to doing so for many more to come. Well, I'm not sure about how many more, but some more. I wish God's richest blessings on all my constituents, and of course, my neighboring constituents of East Portland, to which I have more than a passing acquaintance, and the people of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, I want to say that I am so proud to be the representative of Portland, and especially with my wife, who supports me not only at home to run the home, but to run Portland when I'm busy trying to do my ministerial duties. She is and has made a name for herself. So for those who say she could never be more than Mrs. Vaz, she is now much more than Mrs. Vaz. She is actually a great representative of the people in her own right, and someone who is so passionate about her service that it goes to the point of what good service is. Madam Speaker, allow me to just give you 4 statistics coming out of the last local government election. When many said that Portland gone, the polls said we were down between 20 and 30%. Some of my colleagues in this very house on both sides said, I'm sorry for you. And when I took the Prime Minister and Minister Mackenzie on a whirlwind tour during the local government election, Minister Mackenzie said to me, Daryl, I will tell the Prime Minister never to question you again when you tell him what's happening on the ground, because I don't need to see anymore. I can go home now. Madam Speaker, we had the highest voter turnout as a parish, 39%. We had the highest voter turnout as a constituency, West Portland, 42%. The JLP won the highest percentage of divisions in Portland, 78% of any parish, and handed the PNP its biggest loss in percentage of divisions won as a parish. Last but not least, it had the joint highest voter turnout of all 228 divisions. And to top it off, it is the only parish where every JLP candidate received over 1,000 votes. And that is all to do with the commitment and the work of the members of Parliament, but most importantly, the people of Portland. Because it could not be that only JLP has seen what Action and an Action Man have done. Enough said. I express my deepest gratitude to the Honorable William J.C. Hutchinson, my State Minister, for the support and dedication to the work of this ministry. I also thank my Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Carol Palmer, who we all know is quick-thinking, thorough, and a firm, no-nonsense lady, for her steadfast guidance and support she has provided to me and the ministry over the years. To the amazing team at the Ministry of Science, Energy, Telecommunications, and Transport, I say thank you for your continued hard work and dedication. And I'm always grateful for the support of board members, especially my advisors, Dr. Paris Leo Ayi Jr. and Wayne Chen, who give up their time and talent to contribute to the plans and achievements I will report on today. Madam Speaker, I'm going to pause again and remind everybody in this honorable house and those who are listening that when the Prime Minister appointed me in 2020 as the Minister of Science, Energy, and Telecoms, the ministry was not in the news for good reasons. And this is not today or yesterday. This is a long, ongoing situation. And there was a naysayers that said sending me there was not a good idea. And the Prime Minister must have not been thinking straight. Well, he was thinking straight. Because since 2020, including assuming transport, in 2023, there has not been one day, one moment, despite our media landscape, that myself as minister, my team in the ministry, or the agencies that fall under this ministry have been in for any negative commentary. And I intend to keep that track record, because the bottom line is I know the responsibility that has been given to me, I know what I've been tasked to do, and I only want the best for Jamaica, land we love. Madam Speaker, technology makes it possible for my contribution to reach Jamaicans at home and abroad, and I thank everyone on social media, television, radio, and those streaming for interacting and sharing their feedback. This is the very essence of how digital technology ensures we keep connected. Madam Speaker, it is now a year since the Prime Minister entrusted me with a newly formed Ministry of Science, Energy, Telecommunications, and Transport. Since then, we have made significant strides in aligning ourselves as a new ministry while building on the programs and initiatives that existed in their respective portfolios. It is with this in mind that I deliver my maiden presentation as Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications, and Transport under the theme, Fueling Jamaica's Growth Everywhere. Madam Speaker, transport being the most recent addition to my portfolio responsibilities, has proven to be the largest area of responsibility in the ministry, comprising 13 agencies and departments. This area requires astute focus and planning through policy, legislation, and implementation. I will begin with a look at the aviation arm of the portfolio. The Airports Authority of Jamaica, a self-financed statutory body, is responsible for directly operating the Ian Fleming International Airport and 3 domestic aerodromes, Tinsapen, Ken Jones, and Negril. The AAJ also maintained concession administration and oversight of the Sangster International Airport and the Norman Manley International Airport, operated by MBJ Airports Limited and Pat Kingston Airports, respectively. This year, the AAJ will celebrate its 50th anniversary with a range of activities to mark its achievements over the period. Madam Speaker, and I know my colleague from Western St. Mary will like this part, as he was keenly involved. The AAJ continues its efforts to secure scheduled commercial air service following the successful launch of 2 airlines, Inter-Caribbean and Quality Corporate Air Services in June 22, and most recently, the launch of American Airlines service into Ian Fleming from Miami International Airport on February 24, 2024. The AA service currently operates twice weekly, but is expected to increase as demand grows. The service represents a game changer for the Ian Fleming and the surrounding parishes of northeastern Jamaica, where the airport is located, and the travel and tourism industry of the country in general. I can say that based on communication to me in recent weeks, that American Airlines is intending to move their service to daily service by the end of this year. By the end of this year, hopefully for the winter season. That, again, is a game changer and a great opportunity for the northeastern part. In addition, air navigation system improvements executed by the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority had to fast-track a range of improvements to meet regulatory and customer service requirements for the safe and efficient operations of the American airline flights. The improvements were implemented incrementally between March 22 and March 24 at a cost of $520 million. Regarding the domestic aerodromes, in September 24, a special incentive program will be rolled out by the AAJ to stimulate the domestic commercial passenger service in aerodromes. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's aviation traffic pre-COVID stood at 6.6 million passengers, with Sangster International handling 4.76 million, 72%, and Norman Manley handling 1.84 million, 28%. So Sangster International primarily served tourism over 95%, while NMIA had a mix of Jamaica leisure business and about 40% tourism, making the tourism the main driver of aviation traffic. COVID-19 caused a 66% drop in aviation traffic. But since reopening the borders in 2022, Jamaica's aviation traffic saw a rapid growth, reaching 7 million passengers in 2023, surpassing pre-COVID levels by some 6%, 3 years ahead of the original recovery forecast. Madam Speaker, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. Not to mention, Madam Speaker, the remarkable recovery led to challenges such as congestion at Sangster International and service quality issues at Norman Manley. In response, the government and the airport authorities acted promptly. At SIA, measures included introducing the C5 immigration and customs declaration, installing 40 additional automated border control kiosks and 6 e-gates. NMIA also saw improvements with 20 additional ABC kiosks and 3 e-gates. Bathroom renovations are ongoing and new chillers for the air conditioning systems are expected to be installed shortly. Madam Speaker, the lengthy negotiations regarding the concession agreement for Sangster International and Norman Manley, sparked by the challenges of COVID-19, have finally ended. After thorough consideration, the Cabinet approved the final response to the long-term proposals for SIA and NMIA on September 11, 2023. For SIA, this entails no additional compensation beyond the force majeure event claims, alongside a concession period extension of up to 12 months to address losses incurred during the pandemic. Regarding the Norman Manley International Airport, concessions include a reduction in the concession fees to facilitate the runway extension of 300 meters and the implementation of runway and safety areas. Additionally, there will be a cap on regulated airport charges to prevent tariff increases detrimental to airport traffic. Work for the runway extension is now expected to commence before the end of 2024. These developments mark considerable progress in ensuring the resilience and efficiency of our airport infrastructure amidst challenging times. Madam Speaker, for Norman Manley, for Montego Bay, the check-in hall expansion, immigration hall, pre-board screening expansion, car parks and roadways expansion, solar implementation expansion, phase 3, will significantly increase and improve the airport's capacity and passenger experience. For Norman Manley Airport, as I said before, spending $6 million on the runway overlay, and the runway extension is to be funded and implemented by PACAL. These works are now estimated to cost $60 million and are scheduled to commence in September 24 upon conclusion of the amended concession agreement. So I just want to say again to all those who have had bad experiences at airports and complaints about infrastructure, the concession agreement states very clearly what has to be done. And it will be monitored and followed through to make sure it's done in a manner that is expeditious, and most importantly, it will lead to a much better experience, both leaving and arriving on our shores. Madam Speaker, we are looking to improve the aviation sector on the local side with Vernon Field, a total of $34 million allocated in this budget year for acquisition at Vernon Field as a prerequisite to the implementation of the Vernon Field Light Upgrade Project. The Lionel Densham Airdrome is far advanced. At the Ministry of Finance has given its approval to pursue further development of a proposed $100 million Jamaican dollars to acquire and upgrade the Lionel Densham in St. Elizabeth. Holland Bamboo Airstrip. Holland Bamboo, the acquisition by lease of the Holland Bamboo Airstrip is to be done to facilitate the reactivation of that airstrip. This will make possible airlift to local residents and tourism attractions in that area, such as Appleton Estates and Wyers Falls. The AAJ is now taking preliminary steps to secure the property. And that, Madam Speaker, just to be clear, there is a grass strip there already. There was an approved strip meeting all the requirements of the JCA. So this is not an airport or an airdrome that requires a lot of infrastructure. It only requires access, safe access to land and takeoff, and of course, the necessary security around it. So that's a very low-hanging fruit that we can do. Now, you know they say pass and christening picnic first. So I would have to include that the Ken George Airdrome in Portland is, oh, you know it very well, sir, is in the process of undertaking, the AJ is in the process of undertaking analysis for further expansion and development potential for Ken Jones in Portland. This is where we are providing greater airlift capability for Eastern Jamaica in response to the major infrastructure investments by this government in the eastern end of the island. The Negril Airdrome Airport. Consultants have been engaged by the AAJ to undertake a master planning exercise for the upgrading and development of an international airport at Negril Domestic Airdrome. The plan is expected to be completed by July 24. Let me make it clear. It does not mean that the site is going to be at the existing airdrome that is there. The master plan is going to decide where is the best area in and around Negril to do this, so you have least disruption and, most importantly, enough land to be able to expand as time goes on. So I just say to those stakeholders who may be anxious, you will be a part of the process once the master plan is completed and we know what we are talking about, and it will be and renowned to the benefit of all the residents of Western Jamaica and, of course, the stakeholders in the tourism industry. Madam Speaker, the Maritime Authority of Jamaica plays a pivotal role in developing shipping and regulating matters concerning merchant ships and seafarers. Its functions encompass a wide array of responsibilities, including ship registration, seafarer certification, safety regulation, and maritime training standards. In this fiscal year 23-24, significant milestones were achieved in both its developmental and regulatory roles. Notably, Jamaica's successful re-election to Category C of the International Maritime Organization Council during the 33rd session of the Assembly in London. And this stands as a testament to our nation's commitment to international maritime governance. The achievement reaffirms Jamaica's pivotal role in shaping global maritime policies and regulations, reinforcing our international standing in the maritime space. And let me just say that Peter Brady, who has now retired after many years, has led the Maritime Authority along with the board and has made great things happen. And we want to thank him publicly for his service and wish him well in his retirement. Madam Speaker, the establishment of a ship repair facility, the floating dry dock, Jam Dock, marked a pivotal moment in enhancing our maritime infrastructure and facilitating vessel maintenance and repair operations. This facility, located at Harbour Head in Kingston Harbour, has already demonstrated its capacity by accommodating for repair of several vessels, bolstering our maritime service sector and fostering economic growth. Furthermore, the efforts in bunkering, including the welcoming of Shell LNG, the first LNG bunker operator in Jamaica, underscore our commitment to sustainability and reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the shipping industry. In tandem with the developmental endeavors, the authority's regulatory efforts have been unwavering. Through rigorous inspections and oversight, we have ensured compliance with the safety and environmental standards on both Jamaica and foreign flagged ships. For this fiscal year 24-25, several major objectives and initiatives have been outlined to further enhance Jamaica's maritime sector. These include legislative developments to govern maritime activities and continue to support the decarbonization of international shipping. The Maritime Authority of Jamaica remains committed in its dedication to fostering a safe, sustainable, and prosperous maritime sector. Through collaboration, innovation, and strategic planning, we are poised to navigate the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead, ensuring Jamaica's continued prominence on the global maritime stage. Madam Speaker, I now seek to enlighten this Honourable House on the work being done to fuel Jamaica's growth in the land transport sector. The Jamaica Urban Transport Company Limited, despite facing challenges, remains a cornerstone of our public transportation system in the KMTR. The JUTC grapples with a number of issues affecting its fleet. However, the government has given the commitment to replenish, modernize the fleet using cleaner energy types, compressed natural gas fueled, and electric buses. I want you to listen carefully now. Since August 23, remember that I became minister in May, the fleet of the JUTC has increased with the addition of 71 new buses. This comprised 50 buses, 45 diesel and 5 electric for testing, 1 electric and 20 CNG Golden Dragon buses. We are working, Madam Speaker, to reduce the commuter misery index by lowering their wait time. And I want to recognize the 2 former ministers of transport, Member Montague and Member Shaw, who started the journey before I took over in May 2023. But the fact is that the buses landed when I was a minister. So, in essence, it's my buses. I want you to listen to this now. Member Chuck. Another 300 buses are being procured using our own money for the first time from the consolidated fund. This procurement will be done in 3 phases. Phase 1 is the purchase of 100 CNG buses, which are expected to arrive in Jamaica by July 2024 in time for the start of the new school year. Phase 2 is to initiate the procurement of an additional 100 CNG buses by the 3rd quarter of this financial year, which is this side of the calendar year. Thanks to Minister Clark. And I will tell tales out of school today because nothing is private and nothing is secret. Minister Clark called me and said, "Where are you with the buses, Minister?" And I said, "Well, 100 leave China on June 5th, which is tomorrow, if my calendar is correct." He said, "What?" I said, "Yes." "When will they get here?" I said, "July." "When will they be cleared?" "Same time." He says, "Okay, you are doing well." So here's what you're going to do. You are going to see whether or not you can conclude the procurement guidelines so that we can pay the deposit on the next 100 before December, which means that instead of those buses arriving at the end of 2025, they will arrive in the 1st quarter of 2025. It is the first time in our history that 100 buses will be loaded on one vessel and arrive in Jamaica at one time and paid for at one time by the government of Jamaica. The last time The last time that we had buses of this quantum was in 2012, where the government of the day signed a loan for 225 buses that would be delivered over an extended period of time. And it was financed by European banks. Now you can imagine now that we have reached the stage of fiscal responsibility where all of the good management that has happened, we can order and draw a check for buses to help the people of this country who are going through a difficult time. I have been there. My opposition spokesperson has been there. And what obtains for people to get to school and to work and get home in the evening is absolutely unacceptable. The third 100 buses which are already committed and blocked at the Ministry of Finance for funding will be done next year for delivery 2026 and possibly earlier depending on how the tax collection goes. But, Madam Speaker, I just want to say to you that remember I asked in December for patience and I asked the commuters and the country at large, as a new minister, give me some time. And they said, how much time? I said, 6 months. This minister don't make promises. This minister make commitments. And if I make a commitment, it is going to be delivered. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, sorry, I've been looking around. You will see what the tie that I wore today. Just to make it abundantly clear where my loyalty and my allegiance lies. And can I say, Mr. Speaker, that I am not surprised that a certain gentleman is not in the house today to listen to me. Because if I was him, I wouldn't come either. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to take you to another section of how far thinking we are at the ministry. We are happy that the Minister of Finance could allocate money for 300 new buses. Does 300 new buses do the trick? No, it doesn't. Will it help? 100%. Can we really, in good faith, go back and say, you give me 300, so give me 200 more? There's too many other areas. So we have to balance. So what am I going to do? I am now going on a mission to refurbish buses that have reached end of life, that are sitting down in the depots, not serving any good purpose. And we have started with 8 Golden Dragon. That took us 3 months. That is, the manufacturers send personnel to Jamaica and refurbish. This is not you go to a garage and give a garage man. This is done by the manufacturer to make sure that we get a warranty or a guarantee of 2 years. The life cycle, the normal life cycle of a bus is between 12 and 15 years. For Jamaica and the way we operate, it is more like 7 to 10 years. So you are now going to pay, Mr. Speaker, between 25 and 30% of the cost of a new bus. That is guaranteed to give you 10 more years with 2 years guarantee. New engine, new seats, new upholstery, new suspension, new paint, everything. Where are the pictures? Where are the pictures? Show me the before and after, man. I have gone down there and looked at them myself, and when you see the before and you look on the after, which is the first 8, You cannot know outside of the license plate that is not a new bus. So this is now going to save us money while being able to increase the reliability of the fleet so that the average Jamaican can move about his business in a timely and orderly manner. We are starting with 24 Golden Dragon. 8 already done, 24 is at the PPC. And we are moving to the Volvos that have been here, the articulated Volvos that are at end of life, that can move 3 times the amount of passengers of an ordinary bus. So when it pull up in Portmore or halfway tree, it just swoop up everybody and move them one time. So I have heard people saying that, what you talking about, refurbished bus? It is simple, common sense approach. If you can get a bus that is at end of life and pay 25% of the cost of a new bus, and by the way, a new bus is anywhere between 180 to 200,000 US dollars, and the articulated buses is more closer to $500 million US dollars, and you are going to get a 2-year warranty and a guaranteed 10-year more. You ask yourself the question, maybe it's a good idea to have a good mixture of that going forward. First time in the history of Jamaica that we are looking at refurbishing buses. Madam Speaker, we know that we have a problem. Mr. Speaker, we know we have a problem with the fare collection and the theft of diesel oil. We are approaching that to get rid of it once and for all. Because A, we are gone to CNG. So the 100, the 200 buses, there is no way to get CNG and do anything with it. So that's going to increase our revenues to be able to buy more bus and refurbish more bus. And then the other leakage is the fare. And the bottom line is that the fare is a problem because the JUTC is collecting 20% of what is being collected through the buses. So we're going to go, Madam Speaker, with a cashless fare collection system. And that is going to be option for payment using smart card fare collection system, which has already seen reduction based on the pilot project due to the fare box leakage and has improved service to commuters. The JUTC is seeking to enhance this system and has embarked on a procurement process for the development of a comprehensive 360 solution to address the needs of both commuters and the company. Madam Speaker, people say that everything good is happening in transport, is happening in the KMTR. We are working assiduously to look at how to revamp Montego Bay Metro. With the expanding routes and the expanding population and investment that is happening down there, we need reliable transportation. What obtains down there now with the amount of vehicles or the amount of buses is just not workable. So we're looking at doing a complete revamp. How that will end up, we will get help from the TIU, but it may be that JUTC may have to give some buses and help in the management and the administration of Montego Bay Metro. But it is a critical because it's growing every day. And we can't allow for the private transport operators to take over because the fares, the differential in the fares will be too much for the ordinary commuter and have an impact on inflation. So we are looking at that and you will hear more about that. I can't tell you about that right now. Madam Speaker, this is close to my heart. Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, better come back quick. Mr. Speaker, it is also government's intention to fuel Jamaica's growth through the implementation of the rural school transportation system. This is a priority program aimed at ensuring the provision of an accessible, safe, reliable, efficient, and affordable and welcoming mode of transportation for our students in rural areas. It is recognized that the students living and attending school within the KMTR benefit from the service of JUTC and other sub-franchises, which is heavily subsidized by the Jamaican government. However, our citizens living in rural parishes across the island are not equally provided for. The ministry acknowledges the hardships faced by our citizens in rural parishes across the island and is currently engaged in determining a mechanism to bring some relief to the cost and safety of commute, with special reference to students in the first instance. The intention is to cause a significant reduction in the cost of transportation in rural areas, again reducing their misery index. It is estimated that households in rural Jamaica spend more than $8 billion annually for transportation for students to access primary and secondary education. The poverty alleviation component of the RSTS is designed to remove the financial burden from the poorest and most vulnerable. What is the problem, Madam Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the problem is to achieve this objective, it is estimated that an annual subsidy of $10.623 billion will be required to adequately provide the rural school transportation system, the actual implementation of which is expected to be private sector driven. We have received support from the Ministry of Education for this initiative, and it is now to engage the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service as to how to fund its implementation. Madam Speaker, as a rural MP, I will not rest until the rural school transportation system is up and running and serving our nation's children. And I would just say that it is not lost on me, colleague Minister of Finance, that the announcement for water of $25 billion, the announcement for roads for $40 billion spark, I'm just, billion, B with a B, I'm just asking you to give us some time to make that presentation to you, because I believe that where we are now, we can plan to even implement it on a phased basis. Because $10 billion a year is not sustainable in the immediate future. But we need to do something. We see the horrific accidents happening. It can't continue. They cannot learn and excel in the conditions that they are traveling and the miles that they are walking every morning. Mr. Speaker, the Jamaica Railway Corporation initiated a pilot student passenger rail service on January 2022, providing secure and economical transportation for students from Old Harbour and Linstead to Spanish Town. This service aims to extend transportation to students attending schools in and around Spanish Town with efficient communication channels established with parents, schools, and students. Since its inception, the service has served 136,724 passengers, with an average daily usage of about 500 students. Highlighting its importance and growing demand, despite impacting the JRC's cash flow, the ministry will assess the project with a view to establish a sustainable program. Madam Speaker, the corporation is currently in discussion with a private company to broaden the commuter rail service to transport over 5,000 workers daily from Old Harbour and Linstead to Angels St. Catherine, supporting the upcoming BPO investment in Angels. Partnership with private companies indicate positive revenue stream expansion for the GRC. In addition, the government continues to explore options for delivering a safe, reliable, comfortable, and affordable public transportation service. We intend to take a serious look at the reintroduction of rail service between Kingston and St. Catherine in the short term for both passenger and freight. Madam Speaker, while not preempting the review, the reintroduction of rail services between Kingston and St. Catherine can potentially ease congestion on our roads in the KMTR, especially during peak hours, handling
Minister? Mr. Speaker, I ask that the Minister be given sufficient time to complete his presentation.
The question is on the floor. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it, Mr. Minister. You may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Deliver a safe and reliable, comfortable and affordable transportation experience to hundreds of thousands of commuters and result in significantly reduced carbon emissions as more commuters choose to travel by train. Drive economic development in St. Catherine as business exploit cheaper, more reliable options for moving goods. Madam Speaker, it is no secret that what obtains on the roads today, despite the great achievements of the government in terms of infrastructure, is not sustainable. The traffic congestion is almost all day, and the fact is that we have got to find a way to move the transportation of commercial goods via another route other than by road. So we'll be pursuing that. Madam Speaker, the Ministry received the structure of the ITA in July 23, and actions are now being taken to have the entity fully staffed to carry out its mandate. In the meantime, the staff who were previously employed to the ITA within the Ministry have been seconded, and the Road Traffic Appeal Tribunal has been appointed. The ITA has almost completed the certification of 30 driving instructors through its collaboration with the HEART NSTA Trust. These drivers are professionally certified by the ITA, but have now received full certification through the National Training Agency. We congratulate these graduates on their achievement. The Road Traffic Act, very important. The legislature caused the Road Traffic Act RTA to be promulgated in 2018 and its regulations in February 23, bringing the RTA and the most of its provisions in force in February 23. It is to be pointed out, however, that since I assumed responsibilities for the transport portfolio, in May 23, I was given the mandate by the Prime Minister and Cabinet to review the RTA and have it fully implemented. This is still a work in progress. My ministry has engaged the services of a legal reform consultant to assist with the review of the RTA and has set itself the end of this month, June, to complete the examination and consultation with key stakeholders. It is important to point out that the rule of law on our roads must be adhered to, and there will be no watering down of this legislation. Every effort will be made to bring the remaining Provisions Act into force. Let me hasten to point out that only yesterday, June 3rd, the Cabinet approved the revisions of the child restraint provisions, and those will be coming to Parliament in short order. The Island Traffic Authority, like the police and the Transport Authority, are being equipped to effectively carry out their responsibilities. We are aware, and let me say, I am aware of several concerns that have been raised that it relates to some of the anomalies. And these are part of the review being carried out. We also invite any other interested parties with concerns to submit it to the ministry immediately, as our review period ends at the end of June 2024. So I'm making an appeal to all those motorists who post things on social media about situations that they have had with tickets that they have gotten that they don't feel is fair and just, to reach out to the ministry, reach out to me, put your position forward and what you are recommending, and of course we will look at it with a view of how we can look at it. If I could turn your attention now to the Transport Authority, Mr. Speaker, the past year, the authority has made significant strides in modernizing regulatory framework for land transportation. Collaborative efforts with the ministry have led to amendments to the Transport Authority Act. While the Transport Authority Amendment Act was passed in 2022, we are awaiting the enactment of the corresponding regulations to fully implement the modernized framework. These amendments will expand the authority's powers and functions, including varied expiration dates for road licenses, enhanced enforcement capabilities, and the establishment of a public passenger drivers registry by the end of this fiscal year. Moreover, to bolster enforcement and compliance activities, the Transport Authority has recruited 50 additional inspectors and collaborated with the Jamaica Constabulary Force under a program called Operation Streamline to ensure adherence to the transportation laws. It is to be noted that in the last 4 weeks, this program, the Transport Authority has seized over 200 motor vehicles with over 1,500 prosecutions being undertaken for various offenses, including failure to renew road licenses that expired March 31st. We are committed to ensuring the PPV operators adhere to the laws of the land through the enforcement of the recently enacted road traffic regulations and public engagement efforts promulgating a culture of lawfulness. A greater responsibility is bestowed on PPV operators who are entrusted to transport the nation's most valuable assets, our people. The lawlessness, Madam Speaker, will not continue. And just today, before coming to Parliament, I saw the horrific accident claiming a life of a passenger and 20 or 21 others injured. That just brings home, and my condolences to the deceased and, of course, family and friends. And I hope that the police will investigate and take the necessary action where necessary. The authority has also prioritized upgrading and expanding facilities to increase access to service. The implementation of the Transport Authority's Digital Transformation Project, led by Amber Innovations, seeks to digitize licensing, operations, and legislative process. Phase 1, covering licensing and route management, was successfully implemented in 2024. Colleagues, I want you to listen to this. In collaboration with the JUTC, Madam Speaker, a total of 16 new routes will be offered to PPV sector. 5 of those routes will be stage carriage routes, which will operate under a sub-franchise from the JUTC and will be for the use of coaster and minibuses only, operating through Halfway Tree and terminating in downtown Kingston. These routes will originate from Shortwood, Barbican, Doheny Park, Whitehall and Havendale, and Harbourview. The remaining 11 routes will be offered to taxi operators who have also been requesting additional routes to provide improved service to the public. These routes will be distributed throughout the Kingston Metropolitan Transport Region. Transport Authority has commenced work and will allow for persons applying for road license and commercial license to obtain their red plates directly rather than purchasing a white plate and then upgrade. This move will help to improve the overall efficiency of the system. In response to the numerous calls by an emerging Kinish in the PPV sector, the Transport Authority has embarked on a review of the license categories. The intention is to introduce a new VIP license category for contract carriage sector. To usher in this new license type, amendments will be made to Section 615 of the Road Traffic Amendment Regulations. What does that mean in English? It means that the JUTC before had these routes and were not servicing them. So the routes were just there and nobody servicing them. Yet still, the commuters are bawling out on a daily basis that there's not enough buses, JUTC buses, on the road. So what did I do? Again, they say common sense is not common. I asked the JUTC, what are you doing with these routes? And they said nothing. So if you're not doing why are you doing nothing? Because they don't have the buses. So if you don't have the buses, why don't you free them up so that taxi operators can get the routes to earn additional income to be able to make their business more prosperous? No brainer. So I look forward to the improvement in these 16 and 11, 27 routes within the KMTR that will now be serviced by different classifications of transport operators. But I'm not finished there, because these transport operators have been more than reasonable. Ever since I formed the steering committee and brought 60 or 70 other organizations to just have 10 or 11 representatives with all of the government stakeholders, it has worked wonders. They say that they are prepared to work with me as minister. And they have confidence in me, which I cannot tell you how pleased and happy I am for that. But at the same time, it takes cash to care. So that alone can't help them. So because of the working relation, I have a better understanding of their issues. And again, I want to put on record my sincere appreciation for how they handled the situation the other day with the fare increase. And agreeing to stand down on a commitment given by me to the Cabinet of Jamaica. And therefore, we have to make sure that we give them whatever incentives we can so that their business can be more viable. Madam Speaker, to assist the PPV operators retool and upgrade their fleet, my ministry will reintroduce an age vehicle policy. This policy will allow for existing PPV operators to import motor cars up to 10 years old and buses up to 20 years old for use in the PPV sector. In order to ensure that these vehicles are used for the intended purpose, a lien will be placed on them by the Trade Board. We will be working through that and making an announcement of the finer details in short order. Let us go now to the topic of the day. Ride-hailing services, for which we all know what took place over the weekend with the loss of life of a female teacher. It is imperative that I speak to the ride-hailing service. As a government, we are aware of the increasing popularity in the use of technology to engage personal transportation services. This government is not opposed to this. However, we are adamant that the ride-hailing services must operate within the ambit of the law. We have sought to engage ride-hailing providers, both locally and internationally, to streamline their operations within the regulatory regime. Madam Speaker, I want to publicly state that the only overseas provider that has indicated their willingness to operate within the legal framework is Uber. They came, I summoned them, and they came from corporate office to Jamaica to sit down with me and the team to have a discussion. And the bottom line is that it was a useful discussion that continues. The Transport Authority will be meeting with the local ride-hailing entities this week. In this regard, Madam Speaker, InDrive remains outstanding. And I'd like to point out that in addition to the government concerns about safety and security in this environment, there are issues relating to undercutting in the market where lower fares are charged, and that impacts on the tourism, the economy in general, and the threat of other issues such as money laundering and terrorism. Madam Speaker, I want to indicate very clearly that I have today written to the both telecom providers on a letter from the Assistant or Deputy Commissioner of Police indicating the concerns for national safety of our citizens. And I would like to state that this matter is not today that it came up because of the incident. I actually took a cabinet submission to cabinet 3 weeks ago to discuss this very matter because of the complaints that I was getting from commuters and also from industry players who are playing by the rules and paying their fees for their license, etc. And these apps are undercutting them both in fare without any form of background checks and no monitoring by the Transport Authority. Madam Speaker, I want to indicate that my recommendation as of today, which will obviously have to be vetted for legal purposes, is that a ban on all of those ride-sharing apps with immediate effect until such time as we can come to the table and work out properly how these apps will be regulated in terms of making sure that safety, background checks of the drivers are done not only by the app, the rideshare apps, but by the Jamaican authorities, whether it be the police or the Transport Authority or whoever. And I make no apologies. I have a responsibility I have the responsibility as a minister and an elected representative protect the lives of the people. And I am saying to you, and I am prepared to go to the end of the world to make sure that that ban is enforced immediately with a view of sitting down, which the Transport Authority, in fairness, is already meeting with the local transport operators who have designed apps and want to implement apps for the betterment of their service. No issue. But one thing is for sure, based on what took place over the weekend, and just to be very open, this is just one of several cases that the police have had evidence that these ride-share apps have been used for criminal activity. So it's not the unfortunate loss of a life on the weekend. There are several. And with a letter from the police to the minister responsible for telecommunications, I have a responsibility to act. And I am standing here today acting. And I will do everything to make sure that whatever is in the way, we clear it until such time as we have a proper regulated formula to reintroduce it. So I want to say to the people of Jamaica, I have heard and I am taking the recommended action that I believe is in the best interest of every Jamaican citizen across the length and breadth of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, just to touch very quickly on energy and energy security, the National Energy Policy 2009 to 2030, review and updated. In this regard, Madam Speaker, the new National Energy Policy, NEP 24 to 50, an associated 3-year action plan which has benefited from wide stakeholder consultation, have been completed. They seek to ensure that all Jamaicans have access to energy supply that is secure and reliable, cost-effective and affordable, low carbon and environmentally friendly. The Ministry is now preparing the policy and the 3-year action plan along with the other associated policies for Cabinet's approval so it can be promulgated together. Madam Speaker, I wanted to just take a step back again. I announced my intention in relation to the ride-share app. And I saw my good colleague, friend from St. Andrew, Southeast, nod his head and said that he was in agreement with it. I just want to make sure that that is so. Just in case tomorrow I hear another argument, I just want to make sure exactly where you stand. I want you to tell me by nodding your head that you are in agreement, and I want my colleague who speaks after me, I don't want you to say no, but you're going to speak after me, so I expect you to address this very, very serious matter. Madam Speaker, the Ministry developed the National Electric Vehicle Policy and the National Energy Efficiency and Conservation Policy and Guidelines for public buildings and facilities, specifically for schools and health facilities, with the assistance of the Inter-American Development Bank. Both were tabled in this Parliament on June 30th, 2023. The National Electric Vehicle Policy aims to boost The National Electric Vehicle Policy aims to boost electric vehicles' usage, cut emissions, and improve energy efficiency through phased measures like raising public awareness and promoting alternative vehicle choices. By 2030, it targets 12% of private car owners, 16% of public transportation operators, and aims for the government's entire fleet to go electric by 2015. Madam Speaker, the National Nuclear Energy Policy, MSET, is conducting ongoing research on small modular reactors and international nuclear energy policies. Research was also completed on legislative requirements and standards from other countries in aid of drafting Jamaica's nuclear energy policy. In 2024, January, the Ministry became a bilateral partner with the Foundation Infrastructure and Responsible Use of Small Modular Reactor Technology to provide technical support to Jamaica that are consistent with the highest international technical nuclear standards for nuclear security, safety, and non-proliferation. This is in addition to the established relationship with the International Atomic Energy Agency that is providing appropriate guidance and support with international context insights from capacity building sessions that will aid development of Jamaica's nuclear energy roadmap. I'm happy to indicate that just yesterday, Cabinet approved the MOU with Canadian National Laboratory, Nuclear Laboratory in Canada, based on a visit that the Prime Minister made late last year, and that MOU will be effected in short order. Madam Speaker, non-technical loss reduction. Among the Ministry's priority initiative is a non-technical loss reduction. In August 23, with support from the IDB and the United States Agency for International Development, a National Electric Loss Reduction Plan was completed. Plan supported by Energy Loss Independent Report of 2022 outlines our comprehensive strategy to address electricity theft. In 2023, losses totaled 27.8%, of which 80% was attributed to theft, with the remaining 20% resulting from technical losses. The strategy outlines 10 key initiatives costing $74.5 million US, with projected benefit of $440 million over 10 years, suggesting a simple payback of just under 6 years. The MSET plans to establish a national task force to work to reducing losses to 12.3% by 2035. Madam Speaker, just last week the chairman of JPS called me for a meeting that he considered quite urgent based on the direction in which technical losses are going as a result of theft. It is a serious, serious problem that we face, and we have to. You will be on the task force, don't worry. You will be on the task force. It's a huge problem. There's no two ways about it. Rural electrification program. Who did I just hear a while ago? Is that Marky British? By the way, just so everybody understands, we went to Mona Prep together and Campion together. So we do have a... But that doesn't answer the questions. They're still outstanding. In May 23, portfolio responsibility for REP was returned to MSET, and the ministry continued with the arrangements that have been placed since 2020 with the Jamaica Social Investment Fund to manage the planning and implementation of design and execution of house wiring and pole line requests from start to finish. Funding for the execution of this program is provided from budgetary allocation of the ministry, and requests for intervention are usually routed through the ministry to JSIF. The program has to date received funding support to a value of $845 million to support implementation of house wiring and pole line functions in selected urban and rural communities. Madam Speaker, there have been challenges, but with perseverance to date, we have seen house wiring completed for 2,403 houses in 19 communities, with procurement in progress for a further 700 houses to be wired in this financial year. Under the pole line extension component, 13 communities have projects approved by the JPS and are now in active implementation. A total of 6.7 kilometers of pole line extensions are being implemented. Madam Speaker, let me just say to my colleague, Minister of Finance, that the allocation that was made for the rural electrification program in this budget year is woefully inadequate. And I'm going to make a special appeal that in the supplementary coming up, that we can try and find, because it is a huge problem for safety and security in these areas where the fire brigade can't get in there, emergency vehicles can't get in there because the throw-ups are all over the place, endangering children, adults, old people, everybody. And the fact of the matter is that it is something that we have to address. I want to thank Minister Hutchinson for leading this charge. You have to ask. That's bigger than me. But you can have a quiet word with him. So, Madam Speaker, I want to thank Minister Hutchinson and the team at JSF, JPS, and of course the ministry, but they cannot perform if they don't get the resources. And I see my colleagues from Westmoreland and St. Elizabeth, everybody looking, because you want to know, when are you coming to my town? We are on it. We have all the estimates and every... Marky Bridge is gone? You just came to pay respects, did you? All right. Madam Speaker. All right, Madam Speaker, time is against me. The Integrated Resource Plan 2, the IRP 2, MSET has also finalized the second Integrated Resource Plan, which will outline the roadmap to achieving 50% renewables by 2030. The draft IRP was presented to the various stakeholder groups and feedback was received. The submission will now be presented to Cabinet for consideration and approval. Madam Speaker, the Generation Procurement Entity launched a request for proposals a year ago. On April 5, 2024, the GP received 12 bids, including an alternative one for 482.3 megawatts. We only went out to market for 100, and we got a response of 482.3. This represents a remarkable opportunity for the renewable energy landscape in Jamaica and another step on the path to clean energy transition in the country. The GP is currently evaluating bids, and the awardees will be announced in the next months. Additionally, the GP is expected to publish a second RFP this fiscal year for the capacity of up to 168 megawatts. Madam Speaker, when I came in 2020, the GPE was only in its infant stages of being formed. And thanks to the team, we have been able to get it still not up and running fully, but we have gotten it to a stage where we have been able, with the help of consultants and others, to get it out and get the first 100 out, with the 168 to come. Huge, huge for Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the 175 megawatt power plant replacement in January 2023, the Cabinet approved the policy position that retiring fossil fuel generation plants should be replaced by mature renewable energy. Consequently, JPS plans to replace its retiring 171.5 megawatts of fossil fuel generation with mature renewables in keeping with GOJ's policy position. Once installed, this will significantly increase Jamaica's renewable energy capacity, bringing it to approximately 30% of grid-installed generation capacity. Again, Madam Speaker, between the GPE and what they have gone out for the 100 and the 168 and this 171, we are well on the way to meeting the requirement that has been tasked to us in relation to the 50% renewables by 2030. The government electrical regulator established under the Electricity Act 2015 has made considerable progress in the inception on November 1st, 21. It has licensed 290 private electrical inspectors, representing a 1,300% increase when compared to the previous regime, where there were only 20 electrical inspectors. In addition, there are now 1,676 registered electricians across all 14 parishes. Consequently, for fiscal year 23-24, the GER was able to register 20,665 customers through the GER portal, and some 28,935 inspections were conducted and submitted. For fiscal year April 1, 23 to March 20, 2024, the GER conducted over 3,506 compliance reviews of electrical installation work done by registered electricians and certified by private licensed electrical inspectors. This represents an increase of 14% over the previous year. These compliance reviews are aimed to ensuring the quality and standard of electrical inspections by electricians and inspectors are maintained. Madam Speaker, I now turn to Petrojam. I'm pleased to announce that Petrojam has fully recovered from the fire that damaged sections of the refinery in March of this year. During the period January to December 23, Petrojam supplied 11.79 million barrels of product to local and export markets. This was realized from a mix of refining and importation of finished petroleum products. In fact, Madam Speaker, in 23, Petrojam supplied 5,000 barrels of special grade asphalt needed to pave the upgraded runway according to international standards at the Sangster International Airport during the improvement works over the past years. Petrojam is also tipped to supply asphalt needed for the upgrade of the runway at Norman Manley Airport. This project is scheduled to begin in the first quarter. Furthermore, during the calendar year, approximately 50,000 barrels of asphalt were supplied to pave the South Coast Highway. In support of the local manufacturing sector, Petrojam installed facilities and commenced supply to 12,000 barrels of LPG to the Red Stripe plant on Spanish Town Road. January to December, export sales volumes was 5 million barrels. This equates to approximately 520 million US in export earnings. Additionally, Petrojam is actively pursuing opportunities to supply our players in the region with fuel oil and asphalt. The main strategy Petrojam will be pursuing for 24-25 is the improvement of operational efficiency. Areas of focus include oil loss, crude processing, plant reliability, risk management, and environmental protection and energy conservation. Madam Speaker, the project to install facilities to convert heavy fuel oil, HFO, which will result in estimated increase in asphalt production from 4,000 barrels per month to 19,000 barrels per month, is scheduled for completion in the second quarter of 2024-25. Project aims to reduce the excess HFO produced by installing facilities to use HFO from storage to produce asphalt for export and local demand. This project is necessary as there has been a fallout in the demand for high sulfur fuel, and low sulfur crudes currently being processed cannot produce enough asphalt. However, the project will allow continuous production of asphalt irrespective of the type of crude being processed. Jamaica Aircraft Refueling Services, Petrojam supplied Tinsamen Aerodrome and the Ian Fleming International Aircraft JARS, commenced supply of jet fuel to American Airlines at Ian Fleming. Projected profit for the fiscal year is forecasted at $9 million US. Projected 8.41 million barrels of crude will be refined to meet the sale projections, with the remaining barrels supplied from import petroleum products and blend stock. These are ways in which energy sector is fueling Jamaica's growth. Madam Speaker, I will run through telecoms and science as I am watching the time closely, but I would ask for some leniency based on the fact that it is science, energy, telecommunications, and transport. 4. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Science, Energy, and Telecommunications and Transport continues to fuel Jamaica's growth through strides in the telecommunications landscape through various initiatives and programs. One such initiative undertaken by the ministry with the support of the United States Trade and Development Agency, the OU, and other government entities is a project to enhance access to emergency communications response. In the previous financial year, a design of the proposed Consolidated Emergency Communications Center was completed with the view to collocating the emergency call-taking activities of the Jamaica Constabulary Force and the Jamaica Fire Brigade. Once internal reviews are complete, the ministry expects that the project will move into its implementation stage for both entities. Phase 1 of the implementation should be the integration of call-taking and dispatch in the Kingston metropolitan areas with the intention to expand across the island. Madam Speaker, e-learning, Jamaica, possibly one of the most under-recognized resources under our belts, continues to support the mandate of bridging the digital divide, with special focus on education sector by enabling teachers and students to participate in the digital learning environment. For the 23-24 fiscal year, this was reflected through the Own Your Own Device program and the tablets in schools. 15,000 laptops and locks were delivered to high schools, teachers, and community college. 60 interactive panels to high schools across the island. 9 braille machines were donated to the Salvation Army for the blind, and 220 desktops for special needs schools were distributed as of March 24. 1,100 projectors for all public educational institutions were distributed as of March 31st, 24. Specially configured desktop, laptops, and tablets were also provided to 15 special needs schools island-wide this fiscal year. Through the Constituency Development Fund and the Social Economic Recovery and vaccine program, vouchers were provided to non-part students island-wide to acquire services. In the last financial year, 200 more students benefited from this project, bringing the total beneficiaries to 4,000 students. I don't need to tell you, Madam Speaker, that under the Own Your Own Device Teachers Voucher Program, an additional 11,500 teachers received vouchers to acquire laptops, and to date, over 25,000 have received vouchers valued at over $2.3 billion. $2.3 billion. Going forward, Madam Speaker, the plan initiative will see the infusion of over 13,226 technological devices being procured and delivered at all levels of the public educational sector, including 15 special needs. These include laptop, desktop, projectors, tablets, interactive panels, and STEM toolkits. The company will continue to support the national broadband, the objective of which is to provide reliable internet and connectivity to all public schools. Madam Speaker, as you are aware, the Universal Service Fund is charged with a mandate to bridge information gap, providing internet access to all for 2023 financial year. The entity remains fuel to respond to the growing needs of Jamaicans. To bolster internet accessibility in public spaces, exclusive of parish capitals, major towns, inclusive of parish capitals, major town historical sites, and resorts, 5 new public Wi-Fi hotspots were rolled out in 23-24, Albertown, Trelawney, Brownstown Centre, and Linstead, St. Catherine, Buff Bay, Portland, Old Harbour, St. Catherine. With these 5, it now takes us to 29 Connect Jamaica sites across the island. And of course, we want to increase that to make sure that every township has Wi-Fi hotspot. Trying to cut to the chase. Madam Speaker, I need to touch on this for sure. The USF signed a funding agreement with Cable and Wireless Jamaica to support the Jump by Flow pilot, totaling $13 million. The Jump program aims to provide a free HP Chromebook, subsidized broadband connectivity to households, and digital literacy and skill training. No vulnerable and unconnected citizen registered on PATH program. Two vulnerable and unconnected citizens registered on PATH program. The USF's commitment is to undertake training-related costs during the 6-month pilot. And I know that Cable and Wireless is here today, and I know they've been having discussions with Minister Clark to get subvention, and I am putting in a word, Minister Clark, it is a fantastic program. I saw it work in Puerto Rico, and it is a game changer. So in all of your requests, I ask you to put that to the top of the list. Madam Speaker, discussions have commenced with the Ministry of Education and the Early Childhood Commission to digitize Jamaica School Readiness Assessment. Through this partnership, USF is expected to expend $70 million. In keeping with the ICT, Literacy and Digital Skills Development Trust, the entity embarked on a plan to implement Cohort 3 of the Technology Advancement Program 23-24, and the fund has expended $157 million to support the successful implementation of the program. Notably, the fund provides participants with a fortnightly stipend of 25,000 Jamaican dollars. As of March 31st, the USF TAP 3 program has successfully engaged a total of 24 participants, comprising 135 commuting and 101 residential participants. Madam Speaker, in the fiscal year 23-24, the Spectrum Management Authority demonstrated improved customer-oriented service and achieved remarkable performance in its core operational activities, meeting and exceeding key performance indicators. SMA facilitated the growth of wireless communication industry by promptly processing over 200 Spectrum licenses. Additionally, it collaborated with Jamaica Customs in processing detention notices and type approving equipment to protect incumbent service from harmful interference. Increased access to ICT service and improved quality of those services cannot be overstated. We are aware that 5G mobile services, which deliver fast and more reliable broadband speeds, are being rolled out in many other jurisdictions. in this region, and Jamaica cannot afford to lag behind the rest of the world. The 5G mobile services are extremely beneficial, not just to urban business and consumers' needs, but also to support the national priority of the increasing availability of reliable, cost-effective connectivity, especially to rural communities. This is one area that COVID-19 pandemic exposed a critical need for the rural Jamaica and Jamaicans in rural communities to have a demonstrated capacity to be creative and productive as anyone in the digital world, and they deserve to be served with reliable mobile broadband services like anyone else. Madam Speaker, low-band spectrum, that is spectrum below 1,000 megahertz in the spectrum frequency range, is needed to cost-effectively deliver 5G mobile broadband services. Jamaica's inventory of low-band spectrum designated for international mobile telecommunication in the national frequency allocation is fully exhausted, with the last allocation in the 700 megahertz for commercial service being made in 2021. Without lower band spectrum, the most cost-effective spectrum for our hilly terrain, Jamaica would severely be restricted from moving forward in the 5G world. Proactively, for almost 2 years, the SMA and the Ministry have undertaken a diligent, considered and exhaustive exercise to remedy the lack of available low-band spectrum. Following similar developments in other markets, most notably the United States, the team at SMA and MSET identified the ultra-high frequency 614 to 698 megahertz, 600 megahertz spectrum as suitable for mobile brand services and resolved to access this spectrum block in furtherance of national interests. This spectrum block was designated for digital terrestrial television broadcast services and was currently being utilized by a DTTB operator in Jamaica. The exercise is to repurpose the 600 megahertz band from the broadcast to IMT broadband services commenced in September 22 with an exhaustive island-wide consultation process led by the SMA with the assistance of international experienced consultants. 22 months of due diligence followed with studious consideration of the various consultant reports, options, factors, and guidelines, and the required important work and detailed submission to make the required change to the International Telecommunications Union Radio Regulations Article 5, the International Table of Frequency Allocation. This culminated at the ITU Radio Conference in Dubai, United Arab Emirates in November 23, with Jamaica successfully included in the footnote 5.308A, ratifying the designation of 600 megahertz block as IMT broadband spectrum. The 600 megahertz spectrum block is now officially designated for mobile broadband in the national frequency allocation, and the initial 40 megahertz of 600 megahertz spectrum is being made available to mobile network operators by way of a public auction and information memorandum for our initial 15-year license. This will leave an additional 30 megahertz of spectrum that can be made available to the market at the optimal time. The public notice of the IM and availability of the spectrum was published in the daily newspapers on May 28th and 29th, with a repeat publication on June 2nd, 2024. The license terms and conditions will stipulate that the mobile broadband services utilizing this block of spectrum must be deployed speedily and extensively in underserved areas of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, it should be noted that by way of information memorandum, an initial 40 megahertz of 600 megahertz is being made available to mobile network operators for initial 15-year license. This will leave an additional 30 megahertz that can be made available to the market. Madam Speaker, allow me to emphasize the significant benefit that will be derived from the conclusion of this important exercise, which we anticipate in the next few weeks. First, Madam Speaker, the efficient and optimal use of our scarce and valuable spectrum resource will be facilitated in the best public interest. The expansion of broadband services, especially to our rural communities, where it is most needed, mobile operators have been requesting this availability of new low-band spectrum for some time, and we have answered their call. Now they must ensure the quality and reach of mobile broadband services befitting the level of creativity and ingenuity of Jamaicans. Second, by joining the world of 5G, Jamaica sends an important signal that we are open and ready for business with the latest in technology that can facilitate the Internet of Things. and applications that can transform lives, increase productivity, and enhance the national security of Jamaica. Third, this new inventory of low-band spectrum will add significant and unanticipated revenues to the coffers of Jamaica, the government of Jamaica, both initially with the allocation of the 40 megahertz and any subsequent allocation of the 30 megahertz when the SME and the government of Jamaica determines the time is right. So, Madam Speaker, while the benefits to the people of Jamaica include significantly improved mobile broadband service and increased access to high-speed internet connectivity, it has been a very complex and challenging exercise because unlike previous spectrum auction, this is in use by a DTTB operator. This requires special planning and thoughtful consideration given the implications for the incumbent and their customers. The extensive time taken to reach this important juncture was important to tick all the boxes and ensure full compliance with the laws, regulations, and policy direction that best serves the needs of the Jamaican people. But we wish to assure them we shall continue to treat their investment operations and customers with fairness and respect as we move towards finalizing this important exercise in the nation's interest. What say you? Sound good? You can't speak today, but I expect to hear from you in short order. Madam, in closing, last but by no means least, science is critical to the numerous advancements we will witness for the foreseeable future. The achievements of the past year provide a strong foundation for continued progress, and the objectives of upcoming year align with the broader national agenda for increased resilience, innovation, and environmental responsibility. Madam Speaker, following supply chain related issues, on the manufacturer's side to project and install the gamma irradiation facility will be completed in June 24. Madam Speaker, when this is commissioned, it will be the first facility in English-speaking Caribbean. This facility will be integrated into two major international IAEA technical cooperation projects that are of vital concern to the country. In collaboration, the SRC will use the gamma ray treatments to enhance the production of two of our most sought-after produce, ginger and coffee, and the eradication of the West Indian fruit fly to bolster food security. The new ginger and coffee lines will be made resistant to and tolerant to the deadly pathogens that affect them, thereby refueling the niche markets of our world-renowned, highly valuable Jamaica ginger and coffee. Through collaboration among MSEC, National Commission on Science and Technology, Planning Institute of Jamaica, and United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, Jamaica has become the 13th nation globally to assess and map the local science, technology, and innovation landscape through the recent completion and validation of its first draft of the country profile. This, Madam Speaker, is critical to the implementation of the National ST&I policy, which was tabled in the House in 2022. Madam Speaker, the efforts to clean up years of hoarded chemical waste in government-owned facilities and academic institutions have been revitalized, and the disposal of certain classes of chemical waste from these facilities is being actively pursued. To this end, the NCST, in collaboration with iSense, University of West Indies, and the Bureau of Standards, conducted a working shop for laboratory managers, technicians in government laboratories in September 23 on the characterization of unknown chemicals and safe methods for handling and disposal. This has led to the demand for more guidance and training and requests for a similar program to be implemented in secondary schools. As we continue to fuel Jamaica's growth everywhere, Madam Speaker, ensuring ethical and proper governance and of emerging technologies to ensure responsible and inclusive development in the scientific field is critical. Strategic priorities reflect the dedication to fostering sustainable development, supporting entrepreneurship, and nurturing the next generation of innovators and scientists. This will be done through targeted organization of Jamaican scientific landscape, enhancing research and development investments, support of STEM education and expansion of science education initiatives by the SRC, the National Medal and Innovation Awards, establishment of a technological commercialization sub-office, and Commerce to establish a dedicated technology commercialization sub-office. This office will catalyze the transforming of innovative ideas into creative ventures, facilitating technology transfer and fostering economic growth. It will play a vital role in nurturing entrepreneurship and innovation, contributing to the economic prosperity of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, in closing, I assume duties with a determination that this ministry would make a lasting impact on the lives of the Jamaican people. And we will not be daunted by the enormity of this task. I have outlined a comprehensive vision for the advancement of these critical sectors and reaffirmed his government's unwavering commitment to advancing the science, energy, telecommunications, and transport portfolios as we continue to fuel Jamaica's growth everywhere. I want to close by once again reaffirming my commitment to the job at hand and to work diligently with my colleagues, both in the Cabinet and in the Parliament, because we have at the end of the day only one responsibility, and that is to put aside partisan, petty politics and come together and work in the interest of every single Jamaican, despite whatever political affiliation. But more importantly, the mistakes that we have made in the past, we owe it to make sure that the generations to come that we are responsible for inherit a better Jamaica. And in saying a better Jamaica, I don't mean economically, politically as well, because I do not like the road that we are going down. I have seen a distinct change in the trajectory of how we once operated. And the comments and the commentary that I am seeing by responsible elected representatives of this country is unbecoming, and we must stop it. Thank you very much.
Madam Speaker, wonderful presentation by the Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport, Member of Parliament for Portland Western. Congrats, Minister. And now, Madam Speaker, I ask you to invite Mr. Mikael Phillips, Opposition Spokesperson on Transport and Mining and Member of Parliament for Manchester Northwestern, to make his presentation.
Let me make for those who are going, please do so quietly. Members, the standing order does not allow persons to speak until they choose to conclude, because persons could choose to speak until tomorrow if they so desire. And therefore, the next speaker, since I'm in the chair, will appreciate that the standing orders will be applied in the extra time that is given. The member is expressing from very early that he will need an additional 15 minutes. Let us all make welcome to his feet the opposition spokesperson for transport and mining, the Member of Parliament for Manchester Northwestern. Please give him a wonderful welcome. So, Member of Parliament, I'm not sure because you didn't give me a list of individuals in the gallery for you as Minister Vaz did, but even without my glasses, I can see my dear friend Gigi, welcome to Parliament. I'm happy you're here to give support to your father.
Madam Speaker, I start to worry when I got that welcome with vim and vigor. Wondering what special have I done or not done. But thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This is a day that the Lord has made. Let us be thankful and give him praise. We should always be thankful, for it is good to do so in all circumstances. My family has provided me with the support, care, and understanding to continue serving the people of Northwest Manchester and the people of Jamaica by extension. It continues to be an honor and a privilege to serve my country in the capacity of an elected representative. I want to also thank my colleagues for the relationship that we have on that side, and for my party leader and the leader of opposition for the confidence that he has bestowed in me. I would also like to recognize Tajay Palmer, the opposition junior spokesperson on mining. Madam Speaker, you have already recognized my daughter, Gabriella, who second of two daughters who will be moving on to university this summer. Very proud of her, Madam Speaker. To also recognize my partner, Rhonda, who is in the gallery. The people of my constituency also continue to sustain me, Madam Speaker, in my efforts and give their fullest support. In return, I can only tell them, as Ruth said, entreat me not to leave you, nor turn back from following you. From where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. I thank them for returning the full slate, and other members from Manchester should listen carefully, the full slate of PMP councillors to continue representing on all issues at the local and national levels. I want to recognize Councillor Rohan Kennedy of the Mile Gully Division, Andrew Smith of the New Green Division, Ryan Peart of the Spur Tree Division, and Devon Wilson of the Johns Hall Division. We know that to whom much is given, much is expected, and we will not let them down. Madam Speaker, over the past few years, this Parliament have not been serving the people of Jamaica the way they deserve to be represented. The people of Jamaica expect better. They expect more from us. They have seen too many broken promises and arrogance from both Parliament and government. Indeed, some here have become tone deaf to the real needs of Jamaicans. A Parliament that behaves in such a manner makes even the jaws of kindergarten children drop at the kind of behavior we sometimes display. The people of Jamaica deserves more. As leaders, we have a lot to reflect on. The government has abused this Parliament using its large majority. This government has refused any meaningful consultation with the opposition on important national matters, or even the people of Jamaica when needed. They push every and anything down the people's throats once it suits the government's agenda, without taking into consideration the very people who sent them here to represent. We do not have to politicize everything, and there is no need to abuse, treat with contempt, or brush off those who do not agree. Good governance is at its lowest point. So much of our population has become angry. The people of Jamaica deserve better. Madam Speaker, before the start of the new financial year, going through the Standing Finance Committee meetings is becoming a waste of time. Even though required by legislation, we are expected to review and propose amendments to recurrent and capital expenditures of ministries, departments, and agencies. But even when there is glaring underspending or over-expenditures, no matter what is highlighted or said, nothing ever changes. So what is the purpose of going through this annual ritual? We need to devise a more effective parliamentary method and mechanism that works. The people deserve better. They expect solutions, not excuses. Many of you saw it in the recent local government elections. Let us consider that. Madam Speaker, also the sectoral debates cause us to come back here yearly with highly repetitive presentations, commenting or proposing solutions on the same things, year after year. Yet we are not moving the needle in the right direction. Madam Speaker, I've been highlighting the budget for the Road Safety Unit within the Ministry of Transport for the past 7 years. It has been underfunded, especially for public education. Even with the best efforts of the unit and the National Road Safety Council, road crashes and fatalities have not declined in any meaningful way, and some roads are even getting worse. Innovative and engaging public campaigns and programs are essential for capturing the attention of diverse audience and instilling lasting behavioral change. Utilizing multimedia platforms, interactive workshops, and community outreach events can foster greater awareness and compliance with road safety regulations. The NRSC, which is Jamaica's response to this crisis, was formed in 1993 based upon representation of the late Sir John Golding and Parliament's approval of Ministry Paper 24 of 1993. The National Road Safety Council's government subventions have not included provisions for public education. The National Health Fund has in the past provided funding for public education for about 10 years, ending in 2020. As the 11th leading cause of premature deaths in Jamaica, road traffic crashes present a significant challenge. This issue is fueled by social factors such as speeding and driving under the influence, resulting in a high rate of injuries and deaths. Data published by the Road Safety Unit shows Jamaica recorded 425 road fatalities in 2023 and 488 in 2022, and by all indications may surpass 425 this year. The World Health Organization in 2021 found that Jamaica's annual road fatality rate is 18 per 100,000 population, surpassed the region of the Americas average of 14.1 per 100,000 population. To address this public health concern, the Pan American Health Organization, in collaboration with the National Road Safety Council, has been implementing the United Nations Road Safety funded Safe System Approach for Safer Roads in Jamaica project. The Safe System approach has been centered around a commitment of eliminating fatalities and serious injuries for all road users by utilizing engineering principles to design safety into the system. Road safety management should include infrastructure improvements and comprehensive data collection and analysis. Enhancing roadways is paramount to reducing the impact of vehicles and ensuring safe operations. As driver avoidance of damaged infrastructure Enhancing roadways is paramount to reducing the impact of vehicles and ensuring safe operations, as driver avoidance and damaged infrastructure may lead to unsafe maneuvers and/or vehicle damage. This involves not only repairing deteriorating road surfaces, but also implementing measures to prevent future damage, such as regular maintenance and the use of durable materials. Infrastructure improvements should also consider the needs of vulnerable road users, including pedestrians, cyclists, children, the elderly, and persons with disabilities. Therefore, more dedicated pedestrian walkways, more accessible crossings, and accounting for cyclists within the network contribute to safer road environments for all users. And I want to just pause, Madam Speaker, to wish a speedy recovery to the member, the Minister of Health, Christopher Tufton, on his recent accident. System design solutions to address user behavior should also be accompanied by education campaigns and enforcement. Public education and enforcement efforts must be precisely targeted based on thorough data analysis to maximize their effectiveness. By identifying specific user groups most at risk, authorities can tailor initiatives to address unique needs and behavior. The aforementioned strategies, Madam Speaker, are aimed at crash prevention. However, a complete approach to road safety must include post-crash care to mitigate fatalities and serious injuries in case of where a crash occurs. As such, Jamaica must place a focus on expanding and enhancing emergency services to ensure timely and effective responsive efforts. Investment in advanced medical training, state-of-the-art emergency response equipment, and effective communication channels between response teams can significantly enhance the quality of care provided of crash victims. Madam Speaker, the reduction in road crashes and fatalities and post-crash care does not happen by itself. It needs to be accompanied by forward-thinking policies with proper implementation and funding. We have been paying lip service with road safety. We recommend, Madam Speaker, that a percentage of the annual revenue from traffic fines go towards funding the Road Safety Unit and the National Road Safety Council public education campaign. Urgent action is needed. Madam Speaker, we need to recognize those individuals, despite others playing lip service with road safety. Others have become champions, the women and the men of the Road Safety Unit within the Ministry of Transport. Dr. Lucian Jones, Paula Fletcher, and the team of the National Road Safety Council, and many other institutions and individuals on behalf of all Jamaicans. We on this side would like to say thank you. By addressing these key areas of road safety management, behavior improvement, and post-crash care outcomes can create a more holistic and effective approach to reducing road accidents and safeguarding the well-being of all road users. Our people deserves better. Madam Speaker, this leads me to the most vexing issue in our country, the state of public transport. The Minister spent quite a time on public transport. Last year, I called for a new policy direction to address issues in the public transport sector. We need to provide a safe, sufficient, efficient, and cost-effective public transport system, which is basic to cities and countries globally. It has fallen on deaf ears. with no response from the minister, and I was hoping that the minister would have come here today, Madam Speaker, and speak about a national policy having to do with public transport. The Gleaner, in a poignant editorial on Monday, May 20th, called for the reimagination of public transport in Jamaica. We are on the same page, Madam Speaker. It suggested that Mr. Vaz should begin that conversation on a rational and rationalized transportation system, taking into account the US $417.3 million Jamaica spent on passenger motor vehicles in 2023, the US $160 million on spare parts and accessories, and around the US $200 million in petrol to run these vehicles. These figures don't take into account the cost and operational treadmill on which the government finds itself in expanding and building new roads to accommodate an increasing number of vehicles. In addition, Madam Speaker, the cost and frequency of fatal accidents killing our students and workers, and the wanton disregard of road traffic laws and regulations are combined to have a deleterious effect on transport. Add to that constant complaints of overcharging of public passengers and inadequate seats in the Kingston Metropolitan Transport Region. Is for these reasons why it is that we need a national transport policy. If announcements alone could fix the problem, they would have been solved a very long time ago. However, it cannot be without effective policy initiatives, an appropriate regulatory and enforcement regime, a well-managed urban transit system, and a resilient and transparent mechanism. Anything less, Madam Speaker, is a virtual abandonment of the 1 million transit-dependent Jamaicans who cannot afford to own a personal vehicle for daily commute. Further, there can be no solutions to public transport problems without addressing the $16 billion gorilla in the room, the Jamaica Urban Transit Company. Madam Speaker, we on this side, and the Minister, we have had dialogue. We welcome the additional 100 buses that should arrive in June, it is, Minister? In June. That should arrive in July. And we also welcome that there will be the purchase of additional new buses. But we, Minister, you said that it is the first time that a repair program will be put in place by the government. But I remember being the spokesperson at that time of transport and hearing a previous minister, the member from Central, Clarendon, announcing a robust repair service of sending buses from Jamaica to Brazil and back. Yeah? We haven't heard if those buses actually left Jamaica or if they came back. The only comfort I have with the program that you have announced, though, Minister, is that a team will be coming to Jamaica to repair these buses. I am still cautious on the lifespan of these buses because those same Golden Dragon buses that you have announced are not even 10 years old yet, but yet still they are now in need of complete overhaul. But we do welcome the program because, and you know I'm welcome to looking at those. But we, on this side, we do welcome because we have been clamoring that the rolling stock of the JUTC needs to be increased. This year, it is projected to recover from fares, that is the JUTC, and charters, only 1.74 billion of the 14.5 billion it will cost to provide the service. The company will lose 12.8 billion and recover only 12.1% of the cost from fares, falling from 15.5% last year, even with the addition of 71 new buses. This makes the JUTC the worst performing bus company in the world, using the recovery of operation cost measurement. Even in highly subsidized first world systems, recovery is even higher. This is shocking, as 8 short years ago, the JUTC recovered between 65 and 70% of its operating expenses. This year, as stated before, it will only be 12.1%. In the last 3 years alone, the Ministry of Finance has injected 24.5 billion in operating expenses alone. While service deteriorates, communities are unhappy, and the company is in a material breach of its exclusive contract license to provide 25,000 seats in the franchise area. Staff salaries alone. Fitz, allow the minister to listen a little, please. Staff salaries alone are nearly 3 times the company's income and maintenance budget combined. Fuel and lubricants are 300% of the fare box. The JUTC is now a basket case. And if 1 cent of private capital, since the Minister of Finance is coming from the private sector, were in it, closure would be inevitable end. Madam Speaker, we on this side, all of us know JUTC has a social mandate. But it cannot be left to waste resources without providing a good service. The board of management and the minister and this administration are accountable, and they must perform. Minister, it is bad policy. Why the JUTC? You took a policy that you were not going to increase the fleet. It has taken you 7 years to purchase a bus. 7 years. While the fleet was moving from 400 down to less than 200. So you have gone through 4 ministers. You're on your 4th minister. But the truth be told, if I have to be fair to them, you also gave them basket to carry water. And the people suffered for it. Madam Speaker, I want to ask the minister, because the 3 previous ministers before this one, Minister Vaz, the Wi-Fi system that has been announced on multiple occasions with fanfare in this house and elsewhere. What about the Wi-Fi system if we talk about a public good? The Wi-Fi system that was introduced on the JUTC buses. What of the Wi-Fi system? Will it be expanded, Minister Vaz? Or is it in existence any at all since the launch of the Wi-Fi system? We would love to hear more about that public good. The minister has announced new fleet acquisition at regular intervals. A few weeks ago, he announced that another 100 buses will arrive in July. The Gleaner in the same editorial suggested that before finalizing the deal, for the sake of transparency and the assurance of taxpayers that they are getting value for money, the minister should at least inform the Parliament of the details. Madam Speaker, at examining the outturn of the 2023-24 financial year and the projections of 24-25, I'm genuinely concerned about the chronic financial and management issues so obvious at the JUTC. Just by adding 100 or 200 new buses is not the total solution, because the minister announced in his presentation just now about franchising of routes. And the minister answered a question that I was going to ask him, if these routes were routes that were franchise routes within the ambit of the JUTC? If so, then when the JUTC has increased its fleets of buses, what happened to those routes? Is the JUTC going to then rescind the license for the franchise, the agreement with the franchise holders so that they can go back on the routes? What will happen to these routes and these franchise holders is a question that the minister needs to address. They have been made worse by the bad policies of this administration for delaying for 7 years the purchase of any new buses or any worthwhile intervention in the operations of the JUTC. The mission of the company to provide a modern, safe, and cost-effective service is rapidly becoming a fleeting illusion to be pursued but never attained. There's further concern about whether the company has been upskilled to manage the new technology of CNG and electric buses. The maintenance program will have to improve, and the public must treat the buses better, especially the electric buses, which have more glass because of weight consideration. And we're asking the public from this side and the Parliament, stop stoning the buses. The confused fare mechanism will also have to be addressed, and a decision taken on whether fare setting will be referred to the Office of the Utilities Regulation or any other such body. The minister established a sector committee last year, which was used to advise him on fares and connected matters. I exempted myself, Madam Speaker, from that committee because it is not the opposition's responsibility to set fares. I've asked to be provided with the terms of reference for the committee from as early as when I accepted the minister's invitation. Madam Speaker, I have not received the terms of reference. We are still open to meaningful dialogue about the transport sector, but it must be done transparently and with trust. Madam Speaker, no sooner had the committee agreed and recommended the first fare table, the Cabinet approved it. Immediately, it was stopped after the first phase of the fare increase. Why? Is a question. The Minister of Finance, 3 months later, declared it inflationary. Never mind that it is normal to do an inflation impact assessment before a fare increase is granted. Never mind the warning I gave the minister. We on this side gave the minister. Now a section of the industry is disgruntled, even though the minister is thanking them for working with him with the rollback of the fares. And every investor and operator will soon be eating costs, leading to further losses and worsened driving habits to get market share. I believe some of that is at work in recent collisions involving public passenger vehicles. The transport sector needs to be predictable and transparent to be fair to investors and commuters. And it is due time, Madam Speaker, that we treat those operators, the owners within the public transport sector, we treat them like investors in an industry and not hustlers. The transport, utilizing the OUR, Madam Speaker, or even strengthening the Transport Authority as an independent regulator of fares should be considered. Madam Speaker, even with a new fare mechanism, the government must consider a package of sector improvements that can relieve the situation now. These include route restructuring and incentivization, fuel tax review, and new guaranteed service standards. These are necessary not only to assist the economics of transport, particularly in rural Jamaica, where commuters bear the brunt of poor, expensive services. And I think we gave you a solution, Minister, on how it is that you can help to finance the rural bus service. fix the JUTC, reduce the subvention from Ministry of Finance, and use that he would have given you towards the rural bus system. Madam Speaker, as I said earlier,
House Leader, the member's time for speaking has expired.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. May I ask the House to approve additional time for the 15 minutes for the member to finish his presentation.
The question is that the member be allowed an additional 15 minutes to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. Madam Speaker, as I said earlier, good public transport system requires appropriate policies and a regulatory framework, fit for purpose, and balance the interests of the service providers and users. The Transport Authority, which regulates transport in Jamaica, needs urgent modernization to make it more effective operationally. However, the legislative and regulatory tools must be provided. What of the promised Transport Authority Act? And the Minister addressed it. But while there is a delay, it is causing confusion in the sector, Minister, as you know, having to do with the fines that should be charged. Transport Authority Act says one thing, RTA says another thing, and it is at cross purposes at this point in time. However, and the organization must improve its image as a regulator, particularly in licensing where accusations of lack of probity continues. An area in need of examination is whether the enforcement functions of Transport Authority should be incorporated, Minister, listen to this one, into a modern transit police force, just like you would have in New York, transit police and other major cities around the world, charged with policing the provisions of all road license, as well as the safety and security of commuters and workers. Many drivers have been murdered, and many commuters have been the subject of criminal acts, including shooting, kidnapping, robbery, assault, and other serious crimes. I remember a few years ago, a previous Minister of Transport had threatened operators that they would not have renewed their badge or their license if they didn't put tracking systems in their vehicles. And we asked the question, if this would be something that is just a one-off, or will it be continued? How is it that you're going to enforce it? And today, the system is where? Where it started, nowhere. A transit force could implement specific programs to improve the transit operation and operating environment, especially in our town centers, while PSTEB deals with wide road traffic issues and public safety. Madam Speaker, it is not only public passenger vehicle drivers who drive without regard to the rules of the road. Safe roads require enforcement action against all road users who break the law. The recent increase in fatal and non-fatal accidents, I too want to extend condolences to the passenger who died in the accident on the Washington Boulevard, and all families who have lost a loved one in road fatalities over the year and past years. Recent increase in fatal and non-fatal accidents, particularly among public passenger vehicles, is very concerning. I've heard that the proposal by the Minister and the Transport Authority, but we may have to face that the sector is growing faster than the country can produce good drivers with the necessary statutory requirements. Testing is good and necessary, but we must find ways to increase the pool of skilled drivers available locally. Jamaica has well over 60,000 Hackney en route taxi operators, plus contract carriages and buses. If we expand the sector faster than our ability to staff it, we will get drivers who ordinarily should not be in the system. This leads me to the recent announcement of a driver recertification program for PPV drivers, but not other drivers who cause death and mayhem on the nation's roads. According to the minister, no one should be able to go to the Island Traffic Authority and get a PPV driver's license to carry public passengers or a general driver's license without certification for the Transport Authority. I was hoping that the minister would have elaborated more on that in his presentation. Madam Speaker, this policy decision is not on all fours with the law. Relevant amendments should have to be made to Road Traffic Act and regulations. The ITA is the sole body in Jamaica empowered to test and certify driver competence as well as vehicle competence. The Transport Authority is a regulating and licensing body, which also issues driver badges for the PPV sector. Madam Speaker, there is a phenomenon known as regulatory overkill. This is one such example. The minister policy must be PPV specific or chaos will reign in the Jamaica transport sector. There is nothing wrong with the Transport Authority setting standards for PPV owners and operators and asking for proof that they are trained and then certified by a reputable body, such as the HART NSTA, before they are issued the new or renewed badges. And Madam Speaker, if we are not tough on enforcement, there will only be a larger pool of illegal drivers. In everything we do to address the huge transport woes of Jamaica, public education targeting behavioral change must be an integral part of our approach, or we will be laboring in vain, as we have been over the past 8 years. Ecclesiastic 9, verse 10 states, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might." Public order, decency, safety, respect, and everything that is good report must be restored to the transport system. We cannot continue the way we are. Madam Speaker, we intend to ignore issues when they are not political or hot-button issues. When we become aware that there were rideshare operators operating in our space, we on this side implore the government to act swiftly in regulating that sector. We do welcome new businesses and entrepreneurs, but we must be guided by the laws of our land. And Madam Speaker, I'm going to repeat it as I said before. Be it a multinational that from overseas, or a big or small local operator, there are laws that govern the land of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the ban could have been avoided because in 2019, in 2019, there was a former minister that stood up here and said we welcome them with open arms. He's not in here right now. Madam Speaker, we support the ban now, but legislation needs to come sooner than later. Because you have local operators within the space, same ride sharing, that have to pay the fees of the Transport Authority, pay their TCC and NCC. They have to have all sorts of regulation governing them, while others believe that because they operate with an app. And we warned against the safety of commuters, because if anything was to happen to them, there's nothing in law that protects those. So, No, but Minister, you said it earlier. Because there's a story out there about an operator, an operator of one of those rideshare, who stepped out of the gun court. And soon after, he registered himself on one of the apps. And then he started to carry the passenger out to the airport, stepping out of the gun court. So this is something that should have been dealt with a long time ago, Minister. And again, I said some of the issues that we are facing are just bad policies, but better sooner than later. Madam Speaker, road safety and road use are closely connected, and therefore we must look at the state of the road infrastructure. I once again remind this House that the road network is critical to economic development as it connects our cities, towns, villages, and coastal areas to ensure smooth travel of people and goods and provides logistic solutions. Starting reports transport as contributing starting reports transport as contributing 4% of GDP. And for it to continue playing its role and help grow the country's GDP, it must be maintained in a planned and systematic way. I've spoken ad nauseum in these sectoral debates, and the need to create, and I'm glad the Minister of Finance is here. He is against dedicated fund. We know the IMF is against dedicated fund. But we have to do what is best for Jamaica. A dedicated fund, a road maintenance fund, to provide ongoing resources to execute this mandate and enable a safer and more efficient road environment. Minister, I hear you every time, you know, right? But when you look at other economies of the world, Africa, I mean, most states in the United States, the same 20 billion that you're seeding Spark, because the same money that you're using to overlay these roads, within a couple of years, they have to be maintained. Yeah. You are the same one, you know, that keeps standing in here and talking about never having enough money to do an effective road maintenance program. But you cannot do it in an ad hoc way. Minister, you cannot do it in an ad hoc way. Let me highlight something to you. No, let me highlight something to you, Minister. The Spark program that you are initiating right now, and we all welcome it. Right? So I'm not speaking against the Spark program. You have about 30,000 kilometers of road between the National Works Agency and the Municipal Council. If you are to look at the cost per kilometer of overlaying these roads and putting in drains, curb and channel, as you have requested in this program, it works out about $30 million per kilometer. That 20 billion can only give us about, what? Can give us, what, 700 kilometers of road? Out of the 20 billion. Right? But you still have, it's good roads, but you still have 29,000 kilometers of road that will not be touched. And there's no effective program that I've seen, or comprehensive maintenance program for this financial year. No, I'm just making the point of why there needs to be a comprehensive, dedicated fund, road maintenance fund, which, Minister, I am proposing that should be taken out of the hands of the political directorate, just like how you have fund managers for pension funds to manage this fund and ensuring that the longevity of it. In the past, we have allowed the political director to decide on the spending of it. The last road maintenance fund, what we had was really a throughput, because it depended on the budget of the Ministry of Road Works to fund it. Minister, think on it. Believe me. Starting reports, transport. Minister, you dedicate $5 billion for road maintenance, and it is woefully inadequate to do any meaningful road maintenance with $5 billion per year. No, this is a one-off program. It is a one-off program. You still have 29,000 kilometers of road that will not be touched. Starting with, it is obvious that this administration has no interest in tackling the issue of routine road maintenance systematically. Madam Speaker, our road network nationally and locally continues to, Mr. Speaker, our road network, national and local, continues to deteriorate faster than we can maintain it and remains in a condition which is unsatisfactory for our citizens. Mr. Speaker, last year I spoke about the situation with Jamaican contractors and the need for more inclusion by the government of Jamaica on major projects. The playing field is not level, and I'm raising it again due to the anticipated implementation of the 40 billion Spark program, where it appears that the program will be given to one contractor, recently or awarded to one contractor.
10 minutes, madam. Mr. Speaker, I ask that the member, the time be extended by 5 minutes.
10
By 10 minutes, Mr. Speaker, to allow him to complete his presentation.
Stop it.
Mr. Speaker, 10 minutes to complete his presentation.
Member, the request is on the floor that the speaker time be extended by 10 minutes for him to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Speaker, you have 10 minutes starting now.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members. Mr. Speaker, last year I spoke about the situation with the Jamaican contractors and the need for more inclusion by the government of Jamaica on major projects. The playing field is not level. Recently, my colleague and opposition spokesman on Road and Works, Richard Azan, had to express concern about the challenges faced by local contractors on the Southern Coastal Highway Improvement Project. Mr. Speaker, there must be a more inclusive approach to major construction projects undertaken by the government of Jamaica. In my last sectoral presentation, I spoke of the narrative that Jamaica does not have good engineers or contractors to do our major infrastructure projects. Mr. Speaker, that is far from the truth. Jamaica has some of the most qualified engineers and contractors, but we continue to give them a raw deal. The playing field for local contractors must be leveled, not in a protectionist way, but to give equal access and operating conditions to all. Raw material, equipments, and vehicle acquisitions are given huge concessions to foreign contractors. Not the same for our local contractors, who have tendered for government contracts. The playing field must be leveled. If we are to see the true growth in the Jamaican construction sector, we need to give equal access to our people. Jamaican contractors should be brought in line so they can fend for themselves and be able to compete locally and overseas. It is a shame that they must defend themselves at home. Level the vibes, Mr. Speaker. Just as Jamaica is in dire need of a new direction for transport, so is a new direction needed for road construction and maintenance. We can all agree that a better and more efficient transport system will contribute to our productivity. So we can all agree that a better road network with better maintained roads will help to reduce road fatalities, increase productivity, and reduce burdensome vehicle operating costs. We can't keep on doing things the same way and expecting a different result. Our people deserve better. Mr. Speaker, this is a new subject portfolio for me, mining, which has been assigned to me earlier this year. It seems to me mining also needs a reset, as it remains a sleeping giant. Will you just Mr. Speaker, can you control them, please? It is to me, mining also needs a reset. It is, as it remains a sleeping giant in the Jamaican economy. It must be awakened to realize its full capacity of foreign exchange and earnings and employment. To achieve this reset, I fully endorse the proposal made by the member from Eastern Kingston, my predecessor last year, for a national consultation on the future of the mining sector. A national consensus is necessary for the sector to realize the vast potential that still exists within the environment of greater partnership. Among the critical issues to be resolved is that of a greater certainty concerning the earning from the bauxite levy and royalties, which must no longer be subject to full waivers. Rather, there should be flexibility inherent in the calculation formula based on market conditions. A conversation with all stakeholders needs to be had so that Jamaica can maximize its earnings. Efforts to rebuild international cooperation with other producers and producing countries should be paramount. About a month ago, both Washington and London prohibited metal trading exchanges from accepting new aluminum, copper and nickel produced by Russia and barred the import of the materials into the US and Britain. The action was aimed at disrupting Russian export revenue amid Moscow's ongoing war in Ukraine. Russia is a major producer of aluminum, and there is at least one Russian-owned plant in Jamaica. But we have not heard a word on whether exports from the Yuatan St. Catherine plant is affected by these restrictions and whether there has been any intervention at the diplomatic level to argue Jamaica's case. If nothing has happened, then let us know. But if something has happened, the country also needs to know. We have also not heard comments from Russian metal producer Rusal, but the US Treasury Secretary has been quoted as saying, our new prohibitions on key metals in condition with our partners in the United Kingdom will continue to target the revenue Russia can earn to continue its brutal war against Ukraine. Minister, we need to hear something from you. It is also time to get a definitive word on the reopening of Gisco plant at Name, St. Elizabeth. The Minister of State said at the end of April that, and I quote, the government is optimistic about reopening of Gisco bauxite alumina plant, and reopening remain a priority for the government. 2 weeks later, the minister himself said he was confident about the resumption of production. These are non-specific, non-committals that the people of Jamaica cannot take to the bank. But in his presentation, in the debate, the minister was not so sanguine. He was all over the place, not giving any surety. He reported on a recent visit to the plant after meeting with the owners. It was, quoting him, it was clear to him that the plant will require significant work and investment to get it running again. Whereas I do not question either the government's or Gisco's commitment to reopening, the government needs to level with the people, particularly the workers and the communities in southern St. Elizabeth. The plant was closed in 2019 to implement a 2-year modernization and expansion program. The wait has been 5 years, Mr. Speaker. We need to hear something. The issue of the management of bauxite lands mined out is so great an interest to me. I'm happy to hear the minister reported the 638 acres were certified for rehabilitation in 2022-23. Minister, what we want to ensure, lands must be a part of the national consensus discussion on the sector. I would like to see more mined-out lands available to Jamaicans, and I would like to be assured that the companies are being allocated or are holding only what they need for mining, and whatever has been certified, handed over back to the government of Jamaica so that more Jamaicans can get access. Mr. Speaker, I conclude where I started. We must find a way to incorporate and implement the issues and solutions raised in the Standing Finance Committee and in these debates to impact the outcome of the various programs and activities of government. This is not about your side or this side. This is about a better Jamaica. We are not short on good ideas, but there is serious reticence in accepting ideas from the opposition. I am hopeful that this will change so that good, common sense ideas can flow and be accepted. I have today presented some thoughts on what we need to do in public transport, works and mining. These are important portfolio areas which are badly in need of major policy interventions and new initiatives to make them play the role that Jamaican people expect. I commend them to the relevant ministers. I especially call for a new day for the public transport sector, which is facing many cries, although it is a pillar for a modern competitive economy. I remain the same for the mining sector, which has the capacity of awakening greater investment from Jamaican-owned companies. People cannot wait and endure mixed messages coming from the leaders who ought to speak with greater clarity. Confucius said, our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. Falling is an opportunity to grow and to push harder until we reach that breakthrough. Mr. Speaker, let us resolve to try even harder for our Jamaican people, because our dreams can come true if we have the courage and perseverance to pursue them. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica will be a greater place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May God continue to bless Jamaica.
I want to thank Speaker Mikael Phillips, the opposition spokesperson on transport and mining, for his presentation. And I now, Mr. Speaker, ask that the sectoral debate be suspended.
The request is on the floor that the sectoral debate be suspended. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I ask you to invite the Honorable Nigel Clark, Minister of Finance and Public Service, to take the bill shortly entitled the Financial Administration and Audit Amendment Number 3 Act 2023.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand here, Mr. Speaker, to commence the debate on a bill entitled the Financial Administration and Audit Amendment Number 3 Act of 2023. The bill seeks to amend the Financial Administration and Audit Act to establish the National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund, NNDRF, and amongst other things, identify the sources of funding for the NNDRF and the conditions under which withdrawals may be made from it. The establishment of the NNDRF seeks to buttress and strengthen the government's disaster risk management framework given the vulnerabilities that Jamaica faces. Madam Speaker, small island Caribbean states such as Jamaica are especially vulnerable to natural disasters. Even without the direct hit of a hurricane, the fiscal impact can exceed 2% of GDP. The financial management of such disaster risks is a priority of this government, especially as Jamaica faces the increased prospect of more frequent and more intense natural disasters. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the reference to natural disasters in the name of the fund, the government is also concerned with non-natural disasters as well. Essentially, it is any disaster that has a fiscal impact. So disasters such as a severe economic contraction is contemplated by the amendments to the bill. Madam Speaker, funds in the NNDRF are meant to treat disasters that severely affect the economy and that lead to a fiscal impact of 1.5% or more of GDP, whether through revenue loss or increase in expenditure or both. It is important to note that the NNDRF is not meant to replace or displace the role of the National Disaster Fund established under the Disaster Risk Management Act, which has like an entirely different purpose, which is to prepare mitigation, for mitigation and preparedness, rapid early response, and recovery. The NNDRF is a financial risk management tool that forms part of Jamaica's multi-layered suite of instruments to provide fiscal resources that enable the government to respond to the major impact of disasters, or to the impact of major disasters. It is for these reasons, Madam Speaker, that the provisions established in the NNDRF are linked to Section 48C, subsection 2 of the Financial Administration and Audit Act, as it is this section that allows for the suspension of the fiscal rules under certain circumstances. So the construct of the section is that if there is a disaster, a natural disaster or economic contraction, that is projected to have or has had a fiscal impact that exceeds 1.5% of GDP, the fiscal rules are suspended and the government of the day also has access to the NNDRF. Right now, as it stands, the fiscal rules are suspended and the government has to fend on its own. What we hope to have is a stabilization mechanism, a counter-cyclical buffer to which the government of the day can turn to in the event of such natural or non-natural disaster. As so, Madam Speaker, disaster is defined in the bill as any occurrence set out in Section 48C2 of the Financial Administration and Audit Act, which includes public disasters, circumstances of severe economic crisis, and periods of public emergency, amongst others. These are the circumstances that allow for the suspension of the fiscal rules, and this bill is an important step in enhancing the fiscal buffers of the country. Madam Speaker, one of the central economic lessons from our history is that we have to always be creating, maintaining, improving, and increasing fiscal buffers that allow us to endure and recover from economic shocks. I'll now do a clause-by-clause presentation of the proposed amendments contained in the bill. Clause 1 of the bill states the short title, Madam Speaker, and addresses preliminary issues such as the name of the Act being the Financial Administration and Audit Amendment No. 3 Act, and that it should be read and construed as one with the Financial Administration and Audit Act. Clause 2 of the bill inserts a new section, 30A, that establishes the NNDRF and states that the NNDRF will be funded with issues from the Consolidated Fund Principal Bank Account. Madam Speaker, the bill speaks to, in 23-24, drawing down $200 million from the Consol Fund and funding the NNDRF. That clearly is something that we'll amend since that fiscal year has already passed. But in 24-25, the bill speaks to funding the NNDRF with an inaugural contribution of $1 billion, and then annually thereafter, no less than $400 million per annum. The maximum of the fund at this stage, we're stating at $10 billion. Future administrations can increase that once we've achieved that target. This is what we mean, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, of having and improving resilience, fiscal resilience to disasters. Clause 2 continues to identify other sources of funding to include amounts received from the triggering of natural national disaster instruments held by or on behalf of the government of Jamaica. So the government of Jamaica holds the catastrophe bond. We have an instrument with the Caribbean Catastrophe Reinsurance Facility. We have an instrument with the IDB. What we haven't covered to date is what happens if those instruments disperse funds. Where does it go? Does it go to the consult fund and be commingled with everything else? No. What we're saying is it comes to the NNDRF, and once it is triggered, once funds in the NDRF have been triggered by an instrument, it can flow for use by the government. But the means by which it flows is through the NNDRF. Clause 2 also speaks that the government of the day may allocate unspent balances at the end of the financial year, grants received from any source in relation to the objectives of the fund, and returns on investments of the fund. Those can be contributed to the NNDRF. Clause 2, Section 2 states the objectives of the NNDRF to provide a disaster risk management facility that enables an immediate financial response to disaster effects in Jamaica. Clause 2, subsection 3 addresses how disbursement of the NNDRF is to be treated. It says the Auditor General must first certify. In the committee stage, I'll propose to amend that, just to say the Fiscal Commissioner, because that is where we are now, that, and it should really be the fiscal impact is at least 1.5% of GDP due to the disaster. Or, as I mentioned earlier, disbursements may occur if the NNDRF is in receipt of funds from one of the instruments that Jamaica has in place to cover us from the risk of natural disaster. Madam Speaker, to foster transparency in the management of the fund, Clause 2, subsection 4 provides that where a disbursement is sought to be made from the NNDRF, the Minister shall, as soon as practicable, lay before this Honourable House a statement of the sums disbursed, and the sums so disbursed shall be included under the appropriate head in the next appropriation bill or supplementary appropriation bill, as the case may require. So the government of the day would have immediate access to the funds on the disaster, but would have to come to Parliament and transparently account for it. Clause 2, subsection 5 defines disaster as meaning any of the occurrences listed in Section 48C2 of the FAA Act. The occurrences listed in Section 48C2 includes public disasters, circumstances of severe economic crisis, and periods of public emergency, amongst others. Clause 3 amends Section 24H of the FAA Act by renumbering certain paragraphs and adding a few words to ensuring that 24H is subject to the newly inserted section. Clause 4 amends Section 24L of the FAA Act by amending subsection 3 and by inserting next after the word shall the words subject to Section 13A1C. Madam Speaker, the Memorandum of Objects and Reasons summarizes the object of the bill as making disaster risk a financial priority of the government. Mr. Speaker, this week, we recognize 20 years since the passage of Hurricane Ivan, which completely devastated Guyana. It submerged the Cayman Islands and led to the failure of an insurance company right here in Jamaica because they're overwhelmed with claims that didn't have enough reinsurance. It also remains the most destructive hurricane to have hit Jamaica since Hurricane Gilbert, and it has not since been surpassed, thank God, in the last 20 years. Mr. Speaker, the practice of the past in dealing with these occurrences has been to shift budgetary resources away from planned activities whenever these events happen. So when Ivan happened, or any of the others, what you would do is you plan to build something in Portmore, you would suspend it. You had planned to get some buses in, you would park it, and development gets interrupted. This approach, Mr. Speaker, and we learn from history, as others will learn from our period, we learn from the periods in the past. And what has been clear over decades of doing it in this way is that it sets us back. Our development becomes interrupted. And so now, Mr. Speaker, we hope to plan in advance for these risks. We must take responsibility for our vulnerability. So what we're doing is that we determine the components of the risks that we want to transfer to capital markets via the cat bond, and we determine what risks we want to transfer to the multilaterals via the credit contingent claim and other instruments. And we determine the risks that we hope that we retain. And we save towards having the resources on island to deal with the risks that we retain. It is an entirely new and different approach, Mr. Speaker. Jamaica is actually pioneering this. The only small country to have this multi-layered approach of different instruments that deal with the quadrant, right, of severity and frequency. Different instruments that deal with different aspects of that quadrant. And the approach, Mr. Speaker, is one where we seek to safeguard our ability to absorb and recover from disasters without interrupting economic stability and without having to shift resources away from planned activities because of the impact of disasters. Mr. Speaker, I now invite members of this honorable House to support the passage of this bill.
Mr. Speaker, permission to speak from a seat other than my own.
You are.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have some questions for the Minister in relation to what he has just announced. The first question I want to ask is, for the trigger of the estimate of it impacting 1.5% of GDP, whether that is independently made by, in this case, the Fiscal Commissioner, and at what stage would that decision be made? So, for example, if you're hit by a hurricane, you're not going to know in day one or day two after the impact, but you would need access to funds to respond immediately to issues that are there on the ground. So the question is what triggers and who triggers the disbursement from the fund and the determination that this actually is going to impact GDP by 1.5%. Second question relates to the management of the fund. I would like you to elaborate on who would have responsibility for the management of the fund and whether there is a level of independence from the political directorate. And I ask that because history is replete with examples, and I'm not picking on any particular side, but we have had many dedicated funds that end up being used for other purposes. In this case, we have the NHT, we had the education tax before, and successive governments on both sides have dipped into dedicated funds for other reasons, which is why I know you don't really like to deal with dedicated funds in the first place. Third, if we receive donations, for example, from other countries, multilaterals, in the event of a disaster, is it that the funds would go into this particular fund under which there are specific rules about disbursement, or would those funds go to the general consolidated fund for the government to use as it deems necessary and appropriate? And then my final question relates to, you said it's not just natural disasters. You could have severe economic contraction. So if, for example, you go through 3 or 4 quarters of negative growth, and that negative growth reaches 1.5% of GDP, in a scenario like that, in the absence of any earth-made disaster, again, if the Fiscal Commissioner determines that, then does that trigger access to the fund? Those are my questions.
No, I don't. He's covered many of the questions. What my question is the reporting time to Parliament. What are the factors governing when the minister had come to Parliament to give that report?
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I thank the members for the questions. The mechanism set up in the bill is that there is an independent trigger. So it will be on amendment, it will be the fiscal commissioner who certifies that the impact either has been, or is likely to be, or projected to be greater than 1.5% of GDP. Now, the fiscal commissioner may not be able to do that on their own. It is envisaged, and we had a little practice with when COVID came. What happened was that in that case it was Auditor General. The fiscal commissioner would get reports from others, from the PIOJ, would get from the disaster office or the Met office, or from various other sources, and make a determination. It's less science, or there is some science, and there is an art as well. Okay, so they would take information from sources available to make that determination about the likely impact of the disaster, the extent of it. In terms of the management of the fund, what they would have to do is, yes, what would happen, Mr. Speaker, respond to that question, they would have to certify in writing, and I think similar to what happened, we've set it up similar to the escape from the fiscal rules. The same way you escape the fiscal rules is the same way you access resources to help you. So when we escaped on the fiscal rules the last time, the certification was, yes, given to me and tabled in Parliament. And it was tabled in Parliament when I came to, so similarly, let me answer your question now, the proposed law says as soon as practicable, just to account for the complete uncertainty in the aftermath of a disaster, depending on the size of the disaster. Yeah. Yes, but what is sure that you can't draw down from the fund without very shortly thereafter reporting to Parliament that you have. The question about management of the fund, the idea is that we're not going to set up having rationalized public bodies, we're not into setting up another one for this. The funds will be basically held as an account at the Bank of Jamaica. Because of its nature, these are not monies to be invested in illiquid assets because you need to have access to it at any time. So the funds will be invested in liquid securities and bonds and so forth, and it will just be an account at the Bank of Jamaica. The Ministry of Finance will oversee it, but it can't be accessed outside of the legislative means that are provided for in the bill. With respect to the question on receipt of donations, yes. The idea is that the NNDRF is now set up as a segregated fund, as a subset or subsidiary of the Consol Fund, if we use that expression, where donations from multilaterals or from partner countries in the event of a disaster would go to that fund first. Okay? And in this world of disaster risk financing preparation, donors are more likely to make contributions to countries where there is transparency about the arrangements. If the money is just going to melt into the vastness of the consolidated fund, people are less likely to make contributions. The money is coming into a dedicated national natural disaster fund, then certainly the other person's experiences that have been shared with us is that the international community is much more open to making donations where the infrastructure of transparency and accountability exists. And Jamaica is leading the way in this region in setting up this segregated national natural disaster fund to help as a stabilizing mechanism. Think about it. We're planning for the future and planning a mechanism that provides stabilization. As the member inquired, so we're not thinking just about natural disaster. We're thinking about economic contractions as well. Think about the global financial crisis. Think about what happened at 9/11. Think about the various sort of economic disruptions that we've had over the past couple of decades that has had an impact greater than 1.5% of GDP, and the government of the day had nothing to draw on. What we're doing here, while our generation would have certainly inherited a legacy of debt, what we're leaving for future generations working together is to leave a legacy of national wealth. That is the vision. We've set funds aside to provide stabilization mechanisms for the future.
These climate funds coming from climate sources, external climate funding, could go through this mechanism, or is it separate?
Not specifically, it's funds for disaster. Not some climate funds are disaster related. So to the extent it deals with, disaster, then yes, we would put it here. Yeah? Speaker, I ask that the bill be read a second time.
The question is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Even Further Amend the Financial Administration and Audit Act read a second time.
The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. At this time, I put clause 1. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it. I put clause 2.
Just an amendment to subsection 3 of clause 2, 3A. It reads, the Auditor General certifies that a loss of at least 1.5% of Jamaica's gross domestic product is estimated due to the impact of the disaster. I would just like to do just an amendment to have the Fiscal Commissioner do the certification and just change in the words a little bit. And the words proposed would be, the Fiscal Commissioner certifies that the estimated fiscal impact of the disaster is equal to or greater than 1.5% of gross domestic product. If I may read it again?
Yes.
It would read, a minute, pen a second. The Fiscal Commissioner certifies.
Minister?
Yes.
Just name the clause at the same time.
It's clause 2, subsection 3, subsection A. And I'm proposing to delete what is there and to replace it with the Fiscal Commissioner certifies that the estimated fiscal impact of the disaster is equal to or greater than 1.5% of gross domestic product. The language is equivalent to the language in the section of the Act that speaks to escaping the fiscal rules.
Member?
I just have a question here. It's not specific to the bill, but since we're talking about the Fiscal Commissioner, can you confirm whether the Office of Fiscal Commissioner is fully up and operational? I know we have appointed the Fiscal Commissioner, we did so last year, but is the office with staff, etc., operating, that if we have started the hurricane season on June 1st, hopefully we won't be affected, but if we are in a situation, is the office able to deal with an issue like this?
Right. So the fiscal commissioner is appointed and he's working. So if there were an issue, there is somebody we could turn to. Okay. The office is not fully built out yet. Just today I had a meeting, just before Parliament, I had a meeting with a consultant who's been appointed to help with the build-out, and he's finalizing his report for June, which will then go to the SHRMD Department of the Ministry of Finance for approval of the posts. And once those posts are approved, the office will begin hiring. So the fiscal commissioner is there. Yeah? So if there were, God forbid, there's something this season, there's somebody we could turn to. He's not in the most optimal position, but given that he doesn't have his staff and so on, but he is there, and it doesn't make sense to have to come back and amend the bill. Yeah. So if that clause, with that amendment, if we could put clause 2, but there's also another amendment. No, that's for 3. So if we could put an amendment for clause 2, do I need to repeat it or do we have it?
Minister, you may repeat it so that in a clearer.
So I'm suggesting the amendment, the deletion of section 2, subsection 3, subsection A, and its replacement with the following. The fiscal commissioner certifies that the estimated fiscal impact of the disaster is equal to or greater than 1.5% of gross domestic product.
I put clause 2 as amended. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. I put clause 3 as amended.
As amended, okay.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Ayes have it. I put clause 4. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. I put the title enacting clause. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Ayes have it. The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with 3 amendments. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with 3 amendments. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I now ask that the bill be read a 3rd time. Oh, my apologies, Mr. Speaker. I was still in the committee format. I ask that the bill be read a 3rd time.
The question is that the bill be read a 3rd time. Those in favor? Those against?
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Financial Administration and Audit Act read a 3rd time and passed.
House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it is not contemplated for us to do any further business today. I therefore ask that the House adjourns until Tuesday, June 11, 2024 at 2 p.m. At that time, we will continue the sectoral debate when we will have a presentation from the Honorable Marlene Malahoo Fort, Minister of Legal and Constitutional Reform and Member of Parliament for St. James West Central. Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The question is that the House do now adjourn for Tuesday, June 11th, 2024 at 2 p.m. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This House now stand adjourned.
Your safety and security continue to be our priority. We are seeing a downward trend in major crimes, and we are investing $650 million in technology improvement for our police force to provide greater coverage across Jamaica by 2028.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
I'm Seth Grinnell from Grinnell's Driving School, and I want to address how do we properly negotiate corners and bends. Now you can see behind me right here that there are some road signs that suggest to us that there's a bend upcoming.